It's Friday, December 6th, 2024. Let's start off, as we typically do, by
Worshipping Satan.
By saying, well, sure, that's fine too. That may be a method of support for the show I'm not aware of. So if that works, go for it. But for the...
So support us in the prayer of Eldritch demons?
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, you can pray to one or many gods to support the show, and I'm fine with that. But as almost none of them that I'm aware of have a website that directly transmits Ark of the Covenant style straight up or down.
Oh, financial
I can't really
or
put,
power
yeah, I
support?
can't put a link to that that I know of. So if there is one, send it to me, and I will be happy to add it. But
Wouldn't
I'm
that
not
just
aware
be
of any.
the weirdest thing, wouldn't it, to just live in that kind of world?
Well, listen,
Where you're like,
honestly,
and send your prayers to our, to Cthulhu, who will then pass them on our behalf.
there are definitely click to pray things. I know that, but none that would support
I know,
the
but
show.
I mean actually having it be effective on the other end.
Well, listen, I think all these gods are missing a trick. I mean, they have to at some point update and get with the times. So I can't worry about them. But if it ever comes about and anybody knows of a way to directly do it, then let me know.
I saw a great
I'll
quote today that made me think about how this probably all works, which is somebody said, when I'm driving and I see a squirrel in the road and I nearly hit it and I yell, "Run, squirrel! Run, squirrel!" The person saying, "I imagine that must be what my guardian angel is like watching me live my life." And I'm kind of like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, okay.
These
there's a sense to that, I suppose.
godlike beings looking down, going, "Run, squirrel, run!" Oh, he got hit. Well.
Oh, well. What are you going to do?
Yeah. I thought that one was going to make it.
Sadly not. Although, do guardian angels then get graded on how many they save?
Oh, man, wouldn't that be a thing? To get to the other end of that.
Just wondering, because
that's another failure, Cabdale. You have been doing very well.
If that's their job, right?
I don't think it is. Yeah.
Well, then what's the point?
Are there a specific sect of guardian angels?
Hold on, I'm looking.
Yes,
it is.
Well,
No, it is. It is a type of angel that is assigned to protect and guide a particular person, group, or nation. Belief in tutelary beings. Ooh, what is a tutelary being? Is that an angel? Oh, no, that's a tutelary deity is specifically a guardian deity or spirit. So this has its own name. A tutelary deity. What a fun word. Tutelary. That's great. Or tutelar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. In any event, yes, belief in tutelary beings can be traced throughout all antiquity. The idea of angels that guard over people played a major role in ancient Judaism. In Christianity, the hierarchy of angels was extensively developed in the 5th century by Pseudo-Dionysus. Pseudo-Dionysus? Is that fake Dionysus? Wow, this is getting better.
No. I do know something about this. Okay, so Pseudo-Dionysus. So, Dionysus was worshipped far more than a lot of people realize.
Yes, I'm aware of the original.
Yeah, and when Christianity began to crop
the new
up,
Coke of deities? What is this?
And when Christianity started to crop up, right? One of the things that you started to get is that religions started to overlap with each other, right? So in many of the places that Christianity took over, or where Christianity and older religions were kind of running parallel, Dionysus was often seen as the Jesus aspect of the old gods. Because think about it, right? He's born, he's sacrificed, he comes back. Do you know what I mean? Like the whole cycle of life, death, rebirth.
Sure.
So Pseudo-Dionysian is the period to which they were transitioning away from the Greek gods to the Roman Catholic or Christian gods, whatever. But there was this holdover. And the thing is that very often the religions that were there before, they always leave think of it as a stain. They leave a stain on whatever religion that takes over, because the only way you can really get in there is to take over the old religions and kind of make them part of the new religion, absorb them. So there are certain aspects of kind of the Dionysian ideas that was absorbed into Christianity.
Yeah, I don't want one if there are such a thing, because apparently those are counterpointed by personal demons. So I'm good. Thanks.
Oh, is that what it's called?
At the bottom of this, I did not realize that even Satanism had guardian angels, which I find hysterical.
Honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me, though.
No, I'm just saying. I thought guardian angels was a Christian thing. That to me always was just presented as a very specific.
Apparently,
kind of,
it's specifically a Roman Catholic thing.
It is not. It is in every version of Judaism, Christianity, Islam.
It started with the Roman Catholics, is what I read, but maybe it goes beyond that.
I don't know where it started. No. Apparently, it started in Judaism. That was.
But there's always been guardian spirits of some kind. Every religion.
Well, yeah. I think the specificity of an angel assigned to you to help is that yes. There's always been the idea of deities that watched over groups of people and blah blah blah. But the idea of a specific one that's assigned to you, it's all over. Which is the guardian angel concept is is the Hebrew Bible. Which is the oldest Bible now?
That's the Old Testament.
All right, so the Old Testament. So. Let's see. So I guess here it sounds like it's a thing of interpretation. So depending on how you interpret the origin of it, it could be considered Christianity because, for example, was Lot saved by a guardian angel? There's debate. Whatever.
So you're saying then that there are, for those who are Satanists or whatnot, they could potentially have a guardian demon to do their evil acts.
Well, the founder of Aleister Crowley, right? He founded
Crowley.
Yeah, the old classic. He had a whole long thing about guardian angels and like how you could make it work. I'm not going to go into it's very long.
Oh, he had like a scam to make it.
No, not a scam. No, this is a sincere. He was saying that all right. Within the system of Aleister Crowley's magical order A to A, I don't know how else to pronounce that, one of the two most important goals is to consciously connect with one's holy guardian angel, representative of one's truest divine nature, a process termed knowledge and conversation. Quote, it should never be forgotten for a single moment that the central and essential work of the magician is the attainment of the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. Once he has achieved this, he must of course be left entirely in the hands of that angel, who can invariably and inevitably relied upon to lead him to further great step crossing of the abyss and the attainment of the grade of Master of the Temple. End quote. I don't know what any of that means, but what I'm saying is, no, he's not joking around. This is a serious thing for him, as it is in many of these other ones. There's this.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be a 8-paragraph Wikipedia article, and it's like a novella, this page. Which, don't get me wrong, all because of the wonderful Tootelary, what did I say it was? Tootelary Being or whatever? Yeah, that part's great. Yeah. Oh, yes, and then there are the guardian angels, which are a completely different group.
So I wonder if it's like a one-to-one thing, or is it like one guy who's like a social worker and he's just got a whole crowd that he keeps an eye on?
No, well, it can be all of those. Because it says guardian, patron, or protector of a particular place. It can even be a place. Geographic feature, the edge of a mountain. Person, lineage, nation, culture, or occupation. There can be guardian angels of plumbers. Or a guardian angel of all plumbers. I don't know if plumbers as a group have a reference name for the group. So, the plumbarians, whatever. Yeah, no, it's
That
everything.
must be a really strange gig to have in the world of angels.
Wait a minute.
And I guess my question then is, doesn't that run opposite to like the idea of Armageddon? Like if those
Well, that's why I'm saying, isn't the point to? Well, I guess not, because Armageddon is brought about by what, the Antichrist, right? Isn't the Antichrist a function of Armageddon somehow?
Yeah, where basically
I would
up and down go to war. Yeah.
So maybe the personal demon is working towards Armageddon. So maybe the Antichrist is just being preferred by the personal demon. So it's sort of the inverse, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird gig. It's a weird gig.
I'm just delighted by the name of these things, which I never knew had an alternate name. But the idea of a tutelary being, which is not spelled the way I'm saying it. But
I'm so curious about what the day-to-day office scenarios of a being like this must be, to be watching over, like whatever. I mean, like you're the guardian angel of plumbers. That's a big gig. It's a big job.
I would imagine, but
that's a lot. I mean, is there only one? Do you have help?
And see, that's the thing that I'm not sure about is.
Well,
it
did it start out
one.
easier?
A tutelary. I'm just going to keep saying this. A tutelary deity is a singular. It's referred to as a deity or a spirit. Now, the thing is, I don't know how much power a tutelary being has. So can it be in multiple places? I mean, I assume it can warp time. So could it, like Santa Claus, go all over the place and check on every plumber every day or every hour? I assume so.
Well, Santa Claus is not officially part of the Christianity, so.
He is now. But whatever. I don't care. Yeah, who cares?
I don't know if they have powers like that. Well, no, because when you get into the mythology, right, you have to establish it by the rules of the specific mythology you're working with. And outside of Santa Claus, which is its own new thing, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know about the whole time travel element of being everywhere at once.
Yeah, it does not specify that these angels, these tutelary beings, are any less empowered than a standard angel. So I don't know what the powers or abilities
and you do wonder then what is the standard? What can they actually change that won't get them in trouble? Plus,
let's take a look.
Then you have to get into the whole God's plan thing, because if God has a plan,
say that's the one boundary. Is obviously an angel is not going to. Well, okay. In such religions where it is forbidden, that's not to say, because I mean, isn't Satanism or one of the versions of Satanism, "Do as thou wilt" is the whole of the law? Would that not apply to the angels as well? Like if the demons, well, I guess that's the inverse. That's the demon spirits. No, the angels would have to function by the God's plan, assuming that tutelary being operates within a religion in which the top deity uses a hierarchical power structure and has a plan, which may not apply to all religions.
No, but in Christianity, it's often referred to as God's plan.
Right.
And so when people die, they're like, well, it was their time. Well, the whole thing is that, so do you have wiggle room there in between those things?
Well, if anything, no. The wiggle room is that the guardianship then would be to make sure that person does not come to harm before the part of the plan that calls for it.
Yes,
and that
exactly.
would be, for
to
example,
have you die
at
the time that they deem you.
So if you're walking along the street and somebody pushes an air conditioner out their window, the guardian angel makes you step lively or stop to check your phone for an alert that ends up being a bug, so that the air conditioner misses you because you're supposed to die 2 years later, according to Big G.
Right up until the time when you are supposed to get hit by an air conditioner.
And I would assume that at that point, were you to somehow be about to avoid said death, that you would defer to God's plan, and it would be like, well, the guardianship is now superseded by divine mandate. So, yeah. Look, the fun part about talking about all this stuff is the contradictory nature of the whole thing. So,
oh well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I assume that each one has to function within whatever their, because I don't know that there's any religion. I just don't know. I don't know if there's any religion in which angels and God are on the same plane, or angels and gods are on the same plane, or the same thing. I don't know.
No, angels are, to my understanding, the angels are in the employment of God in Christian mythology.
I was going to say, within Christianity that I'm familiar with, yes, that doesn't mean
and
that
angels
there
don't really exist outside of Christianity, because that's
incorrect.
That is are there angels?
Belief in angels is fundamental to Islam, right there. Bang, first sentence.
Oh, okay, yeah. Hold on.
Yeah,
asshole. That's the same religion.
Islam is the same as Christianity?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Yes, it goes. The Jewish religion is based off the Old Testament, right? That's the Quran. That's the Quran. The what do you call it? The Torah. Then
Torah, yeah.
Christians had the New Testament. Yeah, Christians had the New Testament, right? And the Old Testament, which is the Bible. And then Islam basically takes it one step further, and they have another section which has to deal with the honorable the Prophet Muhammad, right? And Jesus is considered to be just another prophet. So
the monotheist, I get the basics, but what I'm saying is...
What I'm saying is all those religions are basically wrapped up in the same mythology. That's why they have angels.
Well, they can have angels, but I don't know if they function the same.
Well, they're all wrapped up in the same scriptures and background. It's just that they come out to different rules, and they have different... that's why I find the fact that these three religions are in constant battle with each other so funny, because they're so close. Whereas
I don't even know how to pronounce this one that has angels. But oh my God, Baha'i faith. It's Iranian. The Baha'i.
But does it use? Yeah, but does it? I guess the thing is any religion that is derived from the same kind of mythologies is going to have angels, because that's its thing. But like, are there angels in the Greek gods or the Norse gods or the do the Hindi have angels?
This one sounds like it's similar, but apparently the Islamic religion rejected this one for some reason. So I don't know what this one is, but it's a major one because it's... I can't even pronounce it. Well, okay, when you get into the Greeks, apparently there is no difference. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. The Greeks. Greeks
so here
had
you go.
an angel.
Angels show up in Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and Zoroastrianism. I'd be very fascinated to how they show up in Hinduism. What's that?
I don't know what I've heard of Zoroastrianism, but I don't know
that's the whole like fire worship and shit like that. I know a little bit about it, but not as much as I'd like to. But I want to know what Hindu angels are like.
Well, apparently they're also in Greek religion.
Are they?
Use the term, it said that the terminology angelikos, which is angelic, and angelos, were used in relation to metaphysical beings. According to Aristotle, just as there is a prime mover, oh man, that's a great name too, so too must there be spiritual secondary movers.
So in Hinduism, divine beings called devas or mahadevas are sometimes referred to as angels. Oh, God. But devas are benevolent supernatural beings, while asuras are malevolent supernatural beings. Okay,
so, and that goes back to what I was saying is, I don't know that all angels function the way that we're used to them within Christian mythologies. So there may be a thing where an angel is of equal to whatever because not all gods are gods the way Christian gods are too. So it may be that there is...
No. If anything, I always felt that the Greek gods... The Christians imply that God is the system, right?
Yeah.
That God designed it all. Whereas I always got the sense with the Greek gods that first off, they're actually not actually gods. They're called undying ones, aren't they?
Something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, I figured that they were always living within the system itself.
They're abusing the system many times.
Yeah, but they're part of it. Yeah. Because even when you look at the creation of Zeus is the child of Kronos, and Kronos is the child of Uranus. Right?
Is Uranus the Titan, or is it Kronos?
No, Kronos is the Titan, but Kronos basically did the same thing to his father Uranus. So Gaia
Okay.
did not want her children destroyed, which was the Titans. So Uranus hid in her vagina, and when Uranus came to make love to Gaia, Kronos cut off his penis and took his power.
Yeah, even...
So the Greek gods, I never got the sense that they...
No, you're right. I'm looking at it now. I wanted to look at what the top thing was, and like Uranus, as an example, is a Greek primordial deity.
Yeah,
the Greek
sky
primordial deities were not actively worshipped, as they, for the most part, were not given human characteristics. They were instead personifications of places or
Yeah, so
abstract
like
concepts. So you're right. There are no
sky,
real
earth,
gods.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Oh,
and
that's
that's
interesting.
why
See, that's what I
like
mean.
the Greek gods fascinated me, because it was this whole idea that they weren't in control of everything, but they were like tyrants. They had power over the world.
So within Greek mythology, since some version of angels exist, my guess is they would be equal to or not subservient to, well, since there are no real gods in the classic sense, so they would be, I don't know what their power levels are.
I got the sense that they were almost like demigods.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. So within that religion, an angel could be of equal footing. Like, I don't know what their angels were called or what if they had names, but they could be on the same plane.
I wonder
as
if the
Zeus.
term angel itself is kind of a bastardization, and that it's kind of a catch-all. It doesn't actually refer to what we think it refers to. Because, I mean, we think angel, and there's kind of an idea, but
I agree. No, I agree.
Christian
I don't know
angels that looked like monsters.
And that's what I'm saying about, I don't know what their function was within the Greek mythological structure. So that's why I'm saying that all angels may not necessarily be bound by a higher power. They may in fact be a faction or a fracturing of a higher power. So all of which to say, supportourshow.com is where you can go to support our show if you'd like to help the show out. That is the longest 20 minutes in, and we get to the actual website address. So that's where you can go, unless you are aware of an angel button. And if you know of an angel button I can add, send it to me, and I will be happy. Maybe I'll just create one. Let's see what I can do with it. Maybe I'll just put an angel button there.
Because then people will start to get ideas about us. You should have a deity button.
Well, maybe I'll just have a prime mover button. I like that term.
a primordial.
Or I'll have a tutelary button.
Ooh, a tutelary button.
It's great. It's a great term. I've already titled the show Tootelary Being, except I'm spelling it wrong.
So to back up what I was saying, the religion of Islam, this is from one of the Wikipedias, was significantly molded by Assyrian Christians and Jews. In explicating the origin of the Islamic Salat, academics state that it was influenced by the religions prevalent in the Middle East during the time of Muhammad, such as Christianity and Judaism. So.
Oh yeah, no, the root part. Yeah, I just meant that they don't function the same. So I didn't know.
No, they don't.
No,
they don't function the same. But they have a lot of the same elements because they derive from a lot of the same mythology.
But it would not surprise me if an angel in Islamic religion functioned very differently than an angel in Christianity, even if they have the same kind of root beginnings. That's what I mean about I don't know how they work in each of these things. I don't know.
I'm checking now. I'm curious.
I mean, I've just found. Hold religions on. I've never heard of.
So apparently they are similar in some ways, but are also important. They have important differences.
Similar, but different.
Okay. Islamic angels are often depicted with multicolored wings, similar to Christian angels. However, later Islamic art depicts angels in more feminine and androgynous ways.
Interesting. Okay. Wait, the Islamic ones were androgynous, or the Christian ones were androgynous?
Later Islamic art depicted angels in more feminine and androgynous ways.
Got it.
All have hierarchies, but no two religions have the same hierarchy.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's see. Well, here we go. In each religion, Archangel Gabriel in Christianity announced the birth of Jesus Christ and John the Baptist. In Islam, Gabriel dictated the verse of the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. So they have different. They're important in different ways.
Yeah, well, that was my hunch. Interesting. There's a guy named Abraham of Worms who was a Kabbalist. It's an interesting name. Okay.
This is a huge rabbit hole. Hold on.
It really is. I mean, I've seen at least 8 different splinters off this thing that go.
Oh yeah, and it's a fascinating rabbit hole to get into like the nuances of who's got what, who believes what, and yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn?
No, I haven't.
The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, more commonly known as the Golden Dawn, was a secret society devoted to the study and practice of occult hermeticism and metaphysics during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Known as a magical order, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was this sounds like something Alan Moore made up, was active in Great Britain and focused its practices on theurgy and spiritual development. Many present-day concepts of ritual and magic that are at the center of contemporary traditions such as Wicca and Thelema were inspired by the Golden Dawn, which became one of the largest single influences on 20th century Western occultism. That sounds rad.
You gotta burn those witches, man. Burn those witches.
Man, I am working on an image right now that has a whole bunch of occult stuff in it, so I have to look at this. Yeah. I love
yeah, I mean,
shit.
and
I don't
and
believe any
the
of it, but I love it.
The downside of it is that I'm a non-believer, so I kind of look at it and go,
Nah, but that's what makes it fascinating.
I think it turns into like almost like fandom for me. It's like people who get like really, 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 really obsessed over anything. Star Wars fanatics. You and I love Star Wars, but we're not fanatics.
Mm-hmm.
But people who are like fanatics and who like stab you over whether Han shot Greedo or not, and you're like, okay, that's too much, guys. And that's kind of the way I look at this thing. It's like, hey, you guys want to make up fun stories and talk about shit like that and dress up? That's cool. I was like, but don't go killing people over, the shit that you believe in.
But I will say, one of the things that I like the best about the lesser occult stuff is it tends to attract people with wild names. For example, within the, what was this called again? The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Select members. Let's read some good names. Algernon Blackwood. Aleister Crowley was one. Florence Farr. Where was that other weird one? Not weird. Interesting. Moina Mathers. That sounds like an alternate rap title name or something. Sax Romer. Violet Tweedle.
Hold on.
William Wynne Westcott.
I'm just very curious. Did Aleister Crowley, was that his real name or did he name himself?
Oh, let's see. Born Edward Alexander Crowley. So it was his middle name. Or, well, I guess it's a play on his middle name. I don't know if Alistair is like a thing for Alexander. But it's his last name is the same. So
he had a nickname or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, he's buried.
Because I have a pet peeve with people naming themselves. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree. But okay, his occupations. He has 4. 3 which I would have guessed right off the bat. The 4th was fun. Occultist, poet, novelist, mountaineer.
No, that kind of tracks.
No.
He likes to be out there.
No, I just. It's just
I thought it was
funny
gonna be like I thought it was gonna be like butcher.
No, well, I would have said
optometrist,
like hook stitcher would have been more interesting, but still.
Sport fisherman.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, it's the occult is a funny thing. You know what? All of it is a funny thing.
It is.
Because it everybody wants power over the world. And all these elements are like, even the idea of guardian angels. It's desperately wanting to have some kind of extra effect on the universe, and to get some kind of support through it, some kind of upper hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a very. I find it. Oh, is that Aleister Crowley all dressed up?
That's him in his Golden Dawn garb. That's fascinating.
Yeah, he's a funny guy in that respect. Yeah.
Oh, he seems like a delight.
And it goes to the whole. I find them fascinating, but they would have hated me, these organizations, because I find ritual and requirement to be exhausting. You got to dress up like this, and you got to wear this, and you have to wave. And I'm like, oh God, it's like. And in that respect, there's a really good Discworld novel. Oh geez, I don't remember what it was, but essentially it's a wizarding school, and at one point a sorcerer shows up, and the whole idea is that wizards, to be a wizard you have to learn magic and you have to practice it, and it's like it's not something that comes necessarily naturally to you. It's something that you have to study, right? Whereas a sorcerer in the Discworld mythology,
it's a discipline. It's not a hereditary ability.
Exactly. Whereas a sorcerer is somebody who fucking breathes magic. They are a magical being. It is just what they do. And this sorcerer shows up and turns the fucking wizarding school upside down. And it is so terrifying and funny at the same time, because it's the whole, these are all basically sorcerer fanboys, and then when a sorcerer shows up, it turns their whole world upside down.
See, that's the thing I always was interested in, is within the non-fictional, well, I guess it's all fictional,
of course,
depending on how you want it. But in other words, in the mythology of magic and sorcery, is it generally the case that somebody can learn all of it, or are some people born with it? Because
I find that a lot of these, I think that's
an interesting question to me,
because there are always those that want to sell it to you like something you can learn, and then there's always some that are like, well, you can never be as good as blah blah blah, you know what I mean, like you can never, you're not born this way or something like that. But I mean, generally a lot of them seemed like they, it was, honestly, a lot of them were like pyramid schemes. That's what it felt like to me.
Well, I think that's the truth of it, but I would be interested in, see, what how you said most of these places would be annoyed by you if you were part of them?
Yes.
I would have. I actually have thought about this a little bit, because I was reading something and they were talking about, if you could have a completely different occupation in a different time period than you live.
Yeah.
And one of the things that occurred to me, because I have been looking up occult symbols and all this stuff for this drawing I'm doing, I would love to be a journalist specifically researching occult stuff, so that I could show up, not have to participate, but would enthusiastically.
But they would give you the
How
benefit of the doubt because you were journalists.
Yes, and I would sincerely be interested. None of this is me making fun. I'm fascinated.
Oh, hey, listen.
By it.
I'm also very interested. The problem is that I then start asking questions, which gets me in trouble.
You can ask questions
because I'm like, hey, Mr. Crowley, why do you have to wear this outfit? Does it specifically have to be cheetah fur?
And I think you would get the answer as long as you were asking it earnestly. I don't think they would have a problem with it.
I'm curious. Why do you believe that this is the way this has to work?
And I always position myself as an ignorant fool who knows nothing. So if you do that, then they're educating you, and that puts them in a position of superiority.
But then it continues. Okay, so where do these rules come from? And how do you know these rules are authentic? And how do you know that this scripture is real? And how did you know that this information you have is real? And it's not I think it's bullshit. It's but how do you know you're getting the real information? You know what I mean? Like, how do you know you're getting the real magic? I mean, there's no issue with the Bible. It's like, there's been so many translations and so many different versions. It's like, do you even remotely think you're getting anyone who thinks they're getting any true version of any story that happened 2,000 years ago is nuts. Because it's just through the loss of translation. Let's say, theoretically, it's all true, right? It's not bullshit. It's all true. You're still not getting the real version of it, because just the translation errors alone. I mean, the King James people, they translated the Bible pretty fucking loosely at times. And there's concepts today that we hold, very that are so important that when you learn that it was it's like the whole Virgin Mary. It's like, okay, she wasn't a virgin, guys. She had 6 kids. Jesus was just a virgin birth. But she was not a virgin. In the actual translation, it's young girl Mary. She was a young girl, and she had a lot of kids. So, they started young then. But there's so many little elements like that. So it's like, based on things like that, the translation era, it's like maybe there was magic. Maybe there was sorcery. Maybe there was great power out there. And we fucking lost it all because we couldn't translate it properly. And what we have today is like, imagine that with coding, right? Imagine if you had this amazing software that you could code the universe with, right? Mm-hmm. And over time, the education system to teach that coding just got worse and worse and worse and worse until people basically only knew half the code, right? Well, how much could you do to software if you only knew half the code?
Yeah.
Does that translate?
Oh, it translates. It's
and that's the thing is
code, you have to try to figure out how to reverse engineer the rest or come up with it.
Yeah, and like to some degree, like with the Greek gods, I find them fascinating because I feel like they were people who had access to better technology, better code than everyday people, and they didn't want to share it, but they could make people immortal. It was a possibility. They just didn't like doing it. But they themselves didn't have more power than what they had. Like, that's the other fascinating part about it, is that there was a finite level of ability. They weren't all-knowing. They weren't all-encompassing. In fact, I think only 2 of the Greek gods could see the future, right? And that implies that the future is outside of their capability. The fact that only 2 of the Greek gods, one of them being Zeus, had the power to have visions of the future means that the path of events is out of their hands, which means that the universe itself is not in their control. Whereas the Christian mythology, they have a god who created the universe. So he's, there is no past, present, or future. He's making it all. In fact, he's made time. So it's an entirely different thing. But getting back to the idea of what we as mortals are getting, you're getting bastardized translations. You don't really know what the fuck is going on because you're getting it through mortal means, and mortal means are massively flawed. So that's why when I don't want to disrespect, but I look at some of this stuff and I'm like, but how do you know? Like, it smacks of con artists and people who want so desperately to believe that they'll kill you for it. It's that whole idea that sometimes they need for something to be true. So if they have to kill you to make it true, they will, because making it seem like it's true is more important than whether or not it is really true.
Right.
So, yes. I would not have lasted very long as a occult reporter.
I would think it would be fun. Yeah.
I'm sure it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Listen, there's plenty of that shit today. It's just that when you deal with people who believe in powerful ideas, they have powerful opinions.
They do. You would have to be a little careful. No doubt about it.
I'm not as careful as you. But I am nice. Here's the thing. Yeah. I know it doesn't come off as it, but I am nice. I can be very nice. You know this.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I just can't. I just can't stop asking questions.
I understand.
Which gets me in trouble with everybody.
Well, yeah.
But you know what? I had a funny idea the other day that I wanted to share with you. Mm-hmm. So, I have always had a hard time with they, them pronouns, right? Not because I don't believe that people should have those pronouns. I'm totally fine with that.
No, you don't have a problem with the pronouns themselves. You've had a problem using them.
I have a problem with the grammar. Because what happens is someone will be talking about a they, them person. And I will not know at what point they are talking about a singular they and a plural they. It has actually created some interesting mishaps in my life where I did not realize that people were showing up. I thought one person was showing up. Or I'm being told a story and I'm confused as to the number of people who are doing what in the story, right? So I thought, and the thing is, this is not just me. I did not come up with this idea in a vacuum. I ran this idea through someone I know who identifies as a they, them. And they seemed kind of on board with the idea, which is that in writing, right? So if you want to write about it, there are times when you need to have the ability to conceive of multiple plural entities, right? So I said, why can't we just pluralize pluralization? So if you've got multiple they entities, it is just theys and thems. My wife is giving me shit. She's like, you're going to sound very redneck talking like that. And I'm like, no. If you have multiple plural entities, then it should be pluralized. So it would be theys and thems. And that completely grammatically solves the problem for myself. Because if I'm writing about multiple plural entities, right? And there are multiple plural entities in my story. I can say, they did this and they did that. Theys jumped out of the plane before it exploded. Right? That makes sense to you because now you say, oh, yeah, that means that all the multiple entities escaped in the story. Now you can read about it and not be massively confused as to who was where, what, when. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you have checked it out with somebody who is an authority on it and they say it works.
Well, listen,
hey,
an
that was an
authority.
accident. I didn't even mean that. Excellent. I said they said it works, but I didn't really even mean it that way. It's just I say that about anybody who's.
I mean,
like
but I know, but the idea
party.
calling somebody an expert, it's like, well, would you refer to, you know?
Yeah, no, yes, I would. It's like yes, if
So
somebody is
if
from
somebody,
the community
so if
that
anybody
you are trying to
identifies
respect,
as,
they are an expert.
okay.
Yeah.
See, and the thing is, I don't see it as a disrespect because to me, the idea is I'm trying to be able to write about multiple entities in a narrative sense.
Yeah.
But the problem for me is that the second you have multiple plural entities, the reader no longer knows what's going on in the story.
Okay, but that is respecting it because anybody who didn't have any care and said, oh, that's stupid, would just assign a gender regardless. The fact that you are trying to write with a way that makes sense is itself a form of respect. Unfortunately, we live in a world where even that base level of, caring about other people's feelings seems to be beyond many people's capacity anymore, which is fucking pathetic, but that's where we are. So no, that is a form of respect. The fact that you cared enough to even see if it was functional.
But
People who didn't care at all.
But what are your thoughts on the matter? Does that make sense to you? If you were reading something and there was they, them in the story, and then there were theys because there were multiple entities.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Because grammatically it's wrong. But grammar evolves
grammar is
to deal
fluid,
with the
right?
reality.
I mean, you've told me that so many times when I've struggled with lots
yes,
of
English is
things
the
of all
language
time.
always evolves to deal with whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I was
think it's
wondering
fine.
if that was a solution to the problem.
I don't think it's something that I wouldn't come to grips with very quickly as a reader, and that's really the primary thing that I have to care about. Is
Well, because
can
we already
I follow
pluralized
what's
everything
happening
anyway. I mean,
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, if my solution to
and by the way, if anybody's listening, please give me your opinion on this because, like I said, I'm kind of workshopping this as an idea. Like I thought about it, and when you have an idea and you're like, that's so dumb. I was like, why would that work?
So,
and then I thought about what's that?
I want to run this scenario, make sure I understand what you're saying, just to make sure it's clear, because
Got it.
So in this story example, you have two individuals who identify with plural nouns.
Yeah, we can give them
plane.
names. We get sort of non-gender specific names.
And now you're getting to what my solution, if I were a writer, would be. So let's say that Alex and Andy, because those are basically, you can function anyway with those names because we don't know what the full names are. Those could be short, nicknames.
Yeah, Alex
and Andy are jumping out of a plane, and you're saying, so what would the example be?
Well, because
so
when you write,
right,
you don't.
Plane. That's how you're saying
when you write, you don't always use the names. You switch back and forth using different pronouns.
See, and I would just stick with names to make it easy on myself.
But it doesn't. That doesn't.
I'm not
always
saying.
flow
I'm not
in
saying
the narrative.
it's elegant.
When so you would refer to Alex and Andy as they throughout the story, but you would need to do it with a reference. So in a sentence, when you write about, so this happens with normal pronouns, right? So if you've got 5 guys in the room, right, that's a lot of he's. So if you throw a he around, then you need to establish what he that is. So you don't use a he unless it is very specifically.
Some writers do, and it irritates me every time I run across it.
And that's fucking awful. The correct way to do it is if you have multiple he's or she's, whatever. If you have multiple pronouns in a room, right? And you use a he or a she, you then need to write it in such a way where the reader naturally understands which he or she you're talking about, or you need to reference in the sentence itself which he or she you're talking about by referencing other characters in relation. So if you were doing this with theys, you could say, Alex and Andy walked into the room. They looked at Alex and said, I think there's a bomb in the plane. right? Now, that right there says to you, if I'm saying if they said to Alex, now you know that they is Andy, right? And I have made you know that by referencing the fact that they are talking to Alex. That's how you do it, so that you are aware of who that specific they refers to. But if Alex and Andy, now we'll throw another person in there to make it harder, because you can't. You could say Alex and Andy jumped out of the plane, right? But now you have Alex, Andy, and thinking of Ryan. That's a good, right? That's a good.
Sure.
Yeah, Ryan. So Alex, Andy, and Ryan. So now you have Alex, Andy, and Ryan, and it gets repetitive and kind of irritating to constantly be like Alex, Andy, and Ryan. Alex, Andy, and Ryan. So when you get to the point where Alex and Andy and Ryan realize they have to escape the plane before it explodes, theys get their parachutes on and theys jump out of the plane. Now you know that all the entities that were there involved have jumped out of the plane. All the multiple entities have come. In fact, that also encapsulates anybody else is there. So if you've got some he's or she's, they are encapsulated in the theys.
So in that scenario, my only question would be, wouldn't they, without the S, still work?
No, because there's multiple entities involved. A they is
But if they're all
multiple...
jumping out of the plane, wouldn't they cover all of them? It would only be necessary if you were saying that only some of them.
See, but it
were
only
jumping, right?
works. For me, it only works if the rule is consistent. So the rule is consistent. If you had a he and a she jumping out, then it's a they. But if you have he and she, this is kind of like in Spanish, right?
Interesting.
If there's what in Spanish, you have feminine and masculine, right? Mm-hmm. So you have he words and she words, right? And it's
in Italian, you have three. You have feminine, masculine, it.
Yes, I know that. Yes, Spanish doesn't have that. But there's basically, it ends in an O or it ends in an A, and that's generally kind of like a male-female, right? But the thing is, if you have 100 women, right, and there's one man in that group, that makes the group male when you're talking about it. Do you understand? Makes no sense to me, but that's how it works. So the way I see it is, if you've got one multiple entity in a group, it then becomes a theys, because you want to establish that there are multiple he's, she's, and theys in a group. So it would become a theys because there is one multiple, and that is my own grammatical thinking. Like I said, this is just me spitballing. You are correct, maybe, when it is a they. But the thing is that if I'm referring to a they, I say to you, they jump out the airplane, right? The problem with you, the reader, is that if you're half asleep and you're not, reading and you're not fully with it, you're sitting there going, wait a minute, they jumped out of the plane. Was that Alex, Andy, or Ryan? And I'm sitting there going, no. That's all of them. That's Alex, Andy, Ryan, he, and she. But you as the reader are saying, oh, so I don't understand if that's all of them or just one of the multiple entities. So the way I see it is you always put the S on. So if there are multiple entities involved, and I say theys, you know that means everybody jumped out of the plane.
I follow it. I guess I would read it the same way with they or theys. But I don't know that I'm a typical reader.
You're not a typical reader, because I ran this by some normal reading people.
I don't,
people who have no skin in the game. Let's put it like that. I ran this by people who have no skin in the game.
It doesn't work. I understand the purpose, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I guess I would just, if I saw they, my assumption is if you have a plane full of however many human beings.
Yeah, but you're forgetting is, by the time you get to that sequence, you've already had potentially hundreds of pages of Alex and Andy being a they. So I have said they at that point in this book so many times, and every time I've had to reference it to which of the theys in the book I am talking about. So that when I suddenly say they jump out of the plane, for all you know now, I'm talking about one of them. And if I as a writer fuck up, and I'm talking about all of them, but you think I'm talking about one of them, and then I screw it up somehow, so that's what it sounds? Like, this is the thing.
I guess the presumption would be that you would say they all, as opposed to just they. and then that should signal.
Yeah, and you can use they all. That's the thing.
Yeah.
This is not an end-all tool.
No,
it
no,
is
no.
a
That's
tool
what I'm saying.
to
Is
add
I don't
to
think
the
there's
tool
anything,
chest of reference.
I think functionally it's fine. So yeah, it makes sense to me. I get it. I think it's a perfectly serviceable solution to the problem.
If you have a book where all the characters are multiple entities, right? Then you need to have a way to properly refer to multiple entities, and it can't just be they.
Sure.
Because you can't have the pluralization of a group and the singular of a group be the same word, because then you have no fucking idea when it is one or the other. You've got to figure out some way, and don't just say, "Oh, people will figure it out," because they won't. There's a lot of people who read that are fucking morons.
That leads me to a question.
Yeah.
So if you employ this method, will you have to put something at the beginning, a forward saying, for reference, when I use the word theys?
Yeah.
Well, because I think some people are going to think you have a shitty editor.
Yeah, well, then you'll have to say, hey, you know what? You'll have
that's what I'm saying, is if you're going to use
or you'll
this,
have to reference it in the
front?
book. Yeah, you'll have to have a disclaimer. Yeah, that this is what you're doing. This is your tool.
Actually,
because, yeah.
That's a good idea. You would have a character. You'd have to do it in every story, though. You'd have to have a character who says, well, wait a minute. How do I refer to the two of you then? Oh, just say theys. Or something like that where a character explains it as opposed to having a little, what do you call it? Not footnote, but what?
Yeah.
An appendix is at the end, right? So
well, honestly, I think
front?
the disclaimer is probably the best idea, because essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to explain to the reader, hey, this is the language I'm using so that I don't confuse your mental imagery.
Well, the good news is it'll also cause people who are small-minded assholes not to read your book, and you don't want them anyway. Because there's people who's going to really go, oh, woke.
And honestly, and this is the thing, is that my biggest issue with the they-them thing is really my ability to write about it, which is to say I can't tell stories where your pronouns are involved, because I can't have a plural and a singular be the same word. I don't fucking know what's going on. Like like I said, this is not something that I'm just sitting there being an asshole about. I've had situations where stories have been explained to me, or I've had texts, and because the they-them approach is not handled in such a way, I never know if they're talking about one person or multiple. So, I was being told.
It's a new paradigm. It is absolutely.
Yeah, and so my whole thing is, well, let's just. If I fully acknowledge the concept that you do not feel like a he or a she, and you don't want to be an it, so you are a they. That's fine. But if we have multiple theys, then we just have to pluralize it. That stays within the rules of grammar, and then we can write about it, and we can tell stories, and we can all move on with our lives and tell great adventure stories of theys and thems as they, travel the cosmos.
Hold on, I'm searching for something because I'm curious if this is something that has been addressed within transmedia. I don't know.
I have not found anything about it.
Yeah, wait, I found something.
Okay.
Maybe. Hold on. Transmedia Guide. Community-informed, inclusive guide for journalists, editors, and content creators. Okay. Is there anything in here? Oh, wow. This is a very large guide. Okay. I can't. This is not a Wikipedia. Yeah, I'm just curious because I know there are trans writers who have written things, and I'm curious what this... Because I imagine it is probably something that is... I don't want to say debatable, but I would say is one where people have not come to an agreement. I mean, we can't agree on what do you call it? With the singular, boring cis stuff, we can't agree on words.
And people have talked about it. Hold on, I'm looking to see if I can get because the way I see it is just the simple pluralization of it.
It makes sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it that way. It is a logical, simple way to do it. I just don't know if this is something that has been looked at in how you would... It's a very specific but a very relevant example, is how do you properly refer to more than one individual who identifies with a multiple pronoun?
You know what? It's because there's the XEM. That's another one of them. If you write another, so if you're talking about
is that another form of them?
It's the XE, XEM.
Oh, okay.
You can use that as
a
third.
Oh, that's great. Zim.
That's another way of doing it.
Oh, there's something called Zim. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
honestly, they're all derivatives of the same idea, right?
But you know what? But that's a way to very quickly code for what
And that's
you're,
a third,
what you're
and that's
talking
by
about.
basically, yeah, and that's the idea of a third gender. And the thing is,
Hmm.
I'm fine with that, but I'm looking for like kind of an established guidance, because there's
Well,
some people that don't like the XE thing at all.
Well, the thing is, the interesting part of that is it would do away with the disclaimer function.
Oh yeah. If the community agrees that XE works, but I've spoken to people.
Suggest something?
What's that?
I mean, this might involve you having to reach out a little bit, but I would assume that there are like Reddit threads for authors and things like this that maybe somebody's asked this question, and if not, you could post the question there and see what people say.
I read someone's story a while back that used they them.
Yeah.
I can't remember what, and I was confused as fuck what was going on. I'll be honest with you. They just played it straight, and they used they them back and forth, and I was really confused. And it's not that I disliked the story. It was like a little thing I was reading in a magazine, but I was just kind of like, okay. I was like, this doesn't work. There has to be a better way to do this. So honestly, the XE thing works really well if people agree on it, but I haven't seen very many authors use that. So I don't know if that's the appropriate way to move forward.
That's what I mean about, there's a Reddit for everything, and I just have to assume that there are ones for authors, and this has probably come up. And I would just be curious, but like I said, it involves you kind of, branching out and asking the opinion of randos on the internet type of thing. But it's interesting.
XE is considered, it's a gender neutral pronoun that can be used in fiction as an alternative to they them.
Well, and like I said, the only nice part about that is it saves you with the
But
disclaimer, and it doesn't
they
sound
them is
incorrect.
the most widely accepted and used gender neutral pronoun in most writing situations.
And that's fine, except that you point out an actual issue with it, which is that it can be confusing because as you said, I made the presumption that I was starting on page 1. You immediately said all that. Well, what happens when you're well into a story? So you point out a correct fallacy in my kind of, just do this. No. So if you don't want to use names, which is my suspicion is how most people get around it. But as you said,
and this is
not
the whole
perfect.
thing. We're trying to get a community to agree, which is difficult.
Well, yes, no disagreement with that. But I think what is significant about the XE or Zim or those is at least you have a viable. I think thing that
I'm gonna ask some people that I know if XE is better than the plural of theys.
I would just ask if they've even heard of it. I never have, obviously, but I'm not in that community, so why would I?
I have heard of it, but I haven't seen it used anywhere.
Well, here's the thing, and this is just my opinion. I don't care if I've ever seen somebody use it. If it is a term that the community recognizes,
agrees on,
I don't even care about agrees on, but doesn't reject. You because you're going to because it's the same thing where I've heard people, I should say heard, I've read people disagreeing on whether you should use the Latin with the X on the end or not. But they don't say it's wrong. They simply say, well, I don't choose to use that. And the other side says, yes, I choose to use that. They're fine with it. But one side wants to use it and one side doesn't. It's not a, you're using it wrong, don't use it. It's a, the same way that if you have, I don't know, it's, as long as it's not something that is seen to be a harmful use, I think you can use it, as long as that's a recognized term. And it's one that's seen as fine.
just quickly scanned Reddit, and a lot of people are like, just use they them. They them can be used. And even when I was talking to the people that I was talking to about this, the first thing that they said to me was, well, but they them is a plural. You can use it. And I was trying to explain that, but as you get further in a story, it'll be difficult to establish.
And did they then recognize that was a problem?
Yes, they did. They did.
Okay, well then there's your out, which is that
that's
you
why
identified a problem correctly.
They were not against the idea of, because what you are basically trying to establish is that there are multiple plural entities.
Yeah, and here's where I, as the reader, and this is your decision as an author, so this is entirely an aesthetic and a personal preference thing. let's say I pick up the book, and and this is not something that I'm not going to pretend I've never done this. Skip past the disclaimer and just start reading it and go, I don't care about a forward, I don't care about an intro, whatever, just get me to the story. I have done this more than once. So if they miss that,
I do that
right?
all the time.
Okay, so let's assume there's going to be some amount of people who do that.
But I think that you would pick up on that pretty quickly. By simply adding an S to it, you would say, oh, wait a minute, there's multiple theys here.
Possibly, but that does assume a certain amount of logical cohesion within the brain.
Well, if I start using XE, you're going to wonder if that's somebody's name.
Well, okay. Well, but it's not capitalized, right? It's lowercase.
Well, it depends on where you use it in the sentence.
So let's say you use it as lowercase, because I agree. You capitalize anything and you assume
Yeah.
it's a name. If it's something that does not
XE,
look,
yes, you use
that's not
XE
familiar.
through, yeah.
All right,
But if I saw
here's
that,
the difference.
I think I would be more confused by a random XE in a book than I would be by a pluralization of a pluralization.
Well, and this is where I am an unusual reader in this way too. When I see something strange in a book, the same way that I saw Tootelary Being and got fixated.
Oh yes,
if I see
you look it up.
If I see a word I don't recognize, I instantly search on my phone for it to see if the author had a
what the fuck
stroke
is this?
midway through and nobody caught it, or were they using something I've never heard of?
Well, listen,
Whereas
if we have listeners with an opinion, especially those who've got some skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
Let us know what your solution to the problem is. And please
I'm going
don't
to make
give
a
me the
suggestion
whole
to you.
Yeah, please don't give me that, well, they is the plural, just use it throughout, because we've already established that in certain situations that will become so confusing to a reader. You will not with the second, especially when you get into a large group. If you write fiction with a lot of people involved, right? It's very hard. It's very easy to lose the reader then onto who's doing what.
It's not a simple problem to solve, without a doubt.
Yeah, and the thing is, I want to solve the problem, because if this is an aspect of our present and our future, then we should be able to write about it. It should be part of our world.
Oh, I'm with you.
So
again,
I want an easy way to communicate it in a narrative.
To give you more credit than you are giving yourself, the fact that you're even thinking about this is more than most people do. So when you say, well, it's not respect, bullshit. Yes, it is. So let's start with that. There are a lot of people who don't give a fuck and don't think it's something anybody should think about. So I'm just saying, give yourself more credit than you are. That's
because I have read a few authors that use they, them, and they haven't used it on main characters. They've used it on secondary characters, right?
Sure, yeah.
And they seem to want to kind of get away from those characters as quickly as possible. They're passing. They're almost there for inclusivity. Yeah. It's the whole, hey, look.
Tokenism. There's a lot of it.
It's a token character, right? But they're not one of the main characters. Therefore, they kind of come and they go. And I'm like, yeah, but what if your main character, what if one of your main characters in a third-person narrative, not a first-person, a third-person narrative, was a they-them character that you were trying to establish in a larger world of having friends who are also they-thems, as well as he's and she's. It's how do you mix that all up and make it make sense to the reader so they can follow along? The thing is, if you can't tell stories, you cannot normalize something into society and make it so that it is just part of us. It is the stories we tell that make our reality. And if you can't tell stories about a group of people, then they are not part of the reality, and that's the problem.
I'm going to suggest you do something you don't typically do.
You want me to talk to people?
No. Well, yes, but beyond that, I know for a fact that there are some percentage of listeners who never listen to the long shows and only listen to the fives. And I would suggest you do a five.
Really? That's
on this. Yeah, yes.
That's a completely different experience. Holy shit! If you never listen to the long shows, man, I don't even exist.
I know multiple people. Oh no. No, because as I've been told by a few of them, the longer ones just get too fucking weird and off the beaten track. And I'm like, that's fine. I understand. The fives are concise.
But that's the whole show.
Well, no. The thing that I find most endearing about it, because I take it as a positive.
No, I just find that to be such a fascinating It
is, but
because,
at
like
least
I said,
we can serve two audiences. So I'm delighted.
I don't exist. If you only listen to the short shows, But I guess that's the thing is, like, the second the two of us get together, it gets weird. So,
Well, that's the
I
thing.
suppose
is
if you don't want it to get kooky, then yeah, I suppose you stick with the fives.
There are people who consume podcasts in a very rapid fire manner. It's the same way that a lot of people listen to things on 2 or 3 times speed, like audiobooks, and I cannot, for the life of me, understand that. I can't do it. I can't understand why you'd want to go faster through an experience like that, but there's most people, I think, listen
Because I need as many experiences as possible, as quickly as possible.
Well, and for some people, unlike us,
are these the people who run through a museum?
Well, no. I think
seen it. I've seen it.
To be fair, not everybody has as much free time as you and I sometimes have. So
I do not have a large portion of free time, sir. You and I have very different lives here. I would argue you have more free time than me.
Well, I was just about to say, not everybody can spend an hour and a half to 2 hours bungling Grand Theft Auto Online missions for 2 hours.
Yes, but I also do that at the sacrifice of sleep. Okay.
Oh no, I understand, but what I'm saying is, not everybody. Some people, they want very short things. They want to just have a bunch of different listening.
They want the Cliff Notes of life. Got it.
Or just listen. Not everything that I think of for a 5 would make sense in a show, but sometimes those are interesting topics for people, even if I don't think they are. Sometimes I've gotten more response on things I think are boring.
But the whole show is made up from little 5-minute instances of ideas.
Except there ain't no 5-minute instance of fucking anything on this show, so it ain't happening. Is what I'm saying. So all I'm suggesting is that you might get a better variety of feedback if we cover both sides of the coin.
No, you know what? Those people aren't weird enough. I don't want to talk to them.
No, that's not fair. Okay, you do whatever you want. I'm trying to get you the best amount of response.
I'm just going to keep talking to anybody I know who has an interest in this subject.
Well, then that's why I'm saying do the 5, because it might get somebody. Because I know for a fact that at least one person who is like that is a writer. So I'm just saying.
I know you are always desperately trying to lure me out of my.
No, when is the last time I asked you to do a 5? Can you even think
No, it's not. No, I know, but you are, in general, always trying to pull me out of my.
No. You want a response, and I'm trying to give you more than just me, because you know what my response is, and it ain't normal. So you want to have.
But why is it not normal? You're establishing a lot normal. That you're not normal.
I agree.
We all carry shades of normal.
Well, but what my goal is to try to get as many people to read your stuff as possible, and that means branching beyond this a little bit.
I know what you're trying to do. It's fine. I get it. I know it's not going to happen, but I get it.
I haven't encouraged you to do a 5, and I can't even remember how long.
No, it's not. I know, but it's because of you that and I don't say this is negative, it's because of you that I am trying to be more social for the whole audiobook project.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not a negative. It's just that is the way you function with this stuff, and I am I just want to be left alone on the mountain.
Well, and generally, I've seen success in randomization. That's all. Big successful thing was random. So
it makes total sense to me. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But in this other instance,
hey, do a YouTube video on it. Whatever.
Oh God, no. Jesus, I don't really want to interact with the public, I guess is the thing.
Well, the nice part is you wouldn't be. I would.
I know.
In this case, they would send the email to me.
They all come for you first, yeah. I just find it funny, the idea that
I'm the face of the
what a different experience it is to only experience this show through the 5s. Like, it's just such a different. It's like an alternate universe to me. The idea.
Okay. Not everybody enjoys stream of consciousness thinking.
Oh, I'm aware. Not everybody likes Burroughs. I get it.
Right.
People like, but it's fascinating to me. And think of it this way, right? Imagine if William Burroughs. Oh, you know what? Actually, no. We'll use Philip K. Dick. He's better for this. Philip K. Dick, right?
God.
Philip K. Dick has 2 kinds of books, right? He has his very straight-laced, like, science fiction stories, like, was it the He did a ton of them. He was just basically writing for numbers. They all have elements of weird, but they're kind of straightforward science fiction stories. Like even Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, right? It doesn't have the psychotic mania that some of his other work does, right? But then you get into his horse liver fat shit, and all of a sudden it's all paranoia. It's all psychotic depression. It's all what is going on with my brain. And if you only read the straight-laced Philip K. Dick books, you'd be like, oh yeah, you know what? He was a pretty good, golden age sci-fi writer of some kind, right? And if you only read the really fucking weird shit, you'd be like, God, that guy was insane. But you only really understand Philip K. Dick by reading all of it. So you understand that that this man had this giant kind of rainbow of possibilities, right? Because he differed so much. So that's why the Burroughs thing doesn't work, because Burroughs was always just Burroughs, whereas with Philip K. Dick, there were very different aspects of him in his writing. If you read like Valise or who's the other one? Whereas what was the
Ubik,
one?
Scanner Darkly.
Yeah, but there's the other one. There's one that I read where all the people are living in the underground, and then they come out of the underground. One of the guys comes out of the underground to find a part for something, and then realizes that there's no war, and they've been lied to. But it's written in such a straight-laced science fiction way. It almost feels like cliche the way it's presented, that like it doesn't have any of that psychosis that the later stuff had. And it's like, that's the thing, is to read one and not the other, right?
Is that the penultimate truth?
Penultimate truth, that's what it was, yeah. Like, I read that book and I was like, hold on, man, I was like, but there's all this stuff missing. Where's the depression? Where's the mania? Where's the psychotic paranoia? I was like, for a book that is this paranoid, it's so unparanoid for a Philip K. Dick book. Like, it just felt so, like, kind of refreshingly conventional for a Philip K. Dick book. But if you only read that school of his work, you would have a completely different experience. So it's fascinating to me, this idea of people who come at a project that I am part of, but are only digesting the more straight-laced aspect of it, which is not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just fascinating to me. Listen, I enjoy the penultimate truth, and these days I tend to stick to Philip K. Dick's more conventional stuff because the other shit hurts my brain. Right? And so I find it fascinating, the idea of an entity existing, but only absorbing part of it. That's all. It's not a negative. It's just fascinating to me.
I will do a 5 where I ask people to listen to this part of the show. Because I know that's the only way it's going to get done. I almost want to take all your audio and see if I can chop it to 5 minutes and do some kind of Burroughs 5, but it's too much work. So I will just find a time code for this discussion and say, do me a favor, skip to this, listen until here, and give me feedback for Lando, because he won't just do a 5-minute show. That's how much he doesn't want to do it. I'll do it for you. The same way that I'm creating audio chapters of your book that you didn't ask for.
Oh, you mean yeah, I'm sorry about that. Jesus Christ.
Oh, I'm going to keep doing it.
I felt so bad. I just didn't know that you were supposed to do that.
That's fine. I know.
Like, I guess that's the thing that baffled me. I was like, oh, that's what I was supposed to be doing with that? Because it just doesn't even... I am
don't
not...
know what we're talking. I don't know if we've mentioned this on the show. So Lando has been sending me the chapters of his book.
I send him the raw files, and Joe puts them together for me.
And I put them together with an interstitial, and then we make a YouTube video. But every time I've done it, I've also made an MP3 file.
I had no idea what they were for.
Assuming that Lando would eventually be making an audio-only version of them as the audiobook, so that he didn't have to strip the audio out of the YouTube video.
And it makes sense to me now, but I didn't know then. So I don't have any of them.
I
don't think you do either, right? Didn't you dump all that?
Oh no! I keep everything. I have a whole I have a whole folder for all your stuff.
Okay, good.
What, are you kidding me? Come on.
Then we will try to do that from this point on. But the thing is, I didn't know.
Oh,
And honestly, like I hate
have it all
doing the
from the
audio.
beginning, so.
I hate doing the audio so much as is. Like I don't know why I hate it. Because when I write, I read to myself, and it's funny because I sometimes when I'm writing and I'm reading, I listen to myself and I'm like, dude, you're perfectly calm, like you're fine, you're not tense at all. But the second I'm recording it, it's just this like I am so tense about it, and then it's funny because I'll talk to you and I'll be like, well, I've recorded this section 4 times, and you're like, dude, it doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm like, no, but I really fucked up, and I just had to keep recording it. And at this point now, I'm kind of like, I'm letting little things go because I'll never fucking finish it if I don't let little things go. And maybe that's just me not wanting to be bad. That maybe it's a good thing that I want it to sound as good as it does. But like, I'm just, yes, I just find it very, stressful.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that.
Like I said,
Okay.
I love to write, and that's about it. I don't like the publishing process. I don't like any. I just want to write and just leave it. You know, that's one of those things I really liked about Count Zero, which was the whole idea of the boxes and the AI making these boxes, and just like that's it. They just make them and then they just send them out into the world. I don't think they even care how they get sent out to the world, because it was the people that were there on the space station that were selling them or like kind of sending them out to the art world. Yeah, the AI didn't give a shit. And there's an aspect to that I really adore, of just saying, you know what, I'm going to do this to the best of my abilities, to the best of what I consider my abilities to be. I don't want to create shit. I want to create something that I find valuable to me. And then I just want to leave it out there. I just leave it and walk away. And if I can never be paid for it, I'll find something else to do in the meantime. But still be compelled. And the thing is, I am fascinated by artists. Listen, I'm fascinated by artists who get paid. It's great to get paid. But I'm also fascinated by artists that create art despite getting nothing for it. Because they must really want to fucking do it. Right? But therein, yes, I find the whole social aspect of all of this to be difficult for me, because it's just not. I'm great with people. I'm great with individuals. Like you and I are great. This is the two of us. But like Joe can tell you that you put us in a group, especially with people that I don't know, and I become a different character altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like we've had some social gatherings where Joe asked me not to go.
This is true.
And at the time, I was like, what? And then, like, a minute later, I was like, I get it. You know, I wouldn't jive. I wouldn't work, you know. And the thing is, that's you knowing that I don't work in that scenario. So, anyway,
True. Yeah.
I find it fascinating. What the hell? What were we even talking about before this? Oh, we were talking about angels before this. Jesus. We haven't gotten very far, have we?
No, but that's all right. I don't know where do we what far is there to get?
You know what? My wife asked me tonight, do you guys know what you're talking about? And I was like, I have no idea. I was like, but usually we're most dangerous when we have no idea.
Newsflash, we never know what we're going to talk
Yeah,
about.
well, no, because sometimes we have things we want to review. Yeah, sometimes we have things we want to talk about.
All right, I always have something to review, but that doesn't mean we have something to talk. We know what we're going to talk about.
I have an interesting thing to talk about, right? This is not a review. I'm just mentioning it as part of something that I watched. So I recently watched a series called Rogue Heroes on, I think it's on MG streaming or whatever that's called, right? Which is about the creation. It is a quasi-fictional version of how the British SAS came to be in World War II, right? Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen the thing.
It's actually quite good. One of the things that they did in the series was to they put it all to like modern music, but like mostly AC/DC, and I guess
so
some people
did the Knight's Tale thing.
No. The Knight's Tale thing, they tried to like weave that into like the story, like almost like the theme. So at one point when it starts out kind of medieval and then it becomes David Bowie. No. And it's not like the characters in the story are listening to this music, right? So like in Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger, they were dancing to David Bowie, right? No. Just instead of having a score, They just have AC/DC. So when the SAS guys are going to bomb the Nazi field planes, right? There's fucking, AC/DC thunder going on. And it works perfectly because these guys were a bunch of psychotic bastards. And they were one of the first kind of groups that was playing outside of the realm of conventional war. And it works that this is the type of music that the people creating it. The music is not for the people of that time. It is for us from this time to understand it. Which goes to this larger idea I wanted to talk about, which is that there is a character in this show named Patty Main, who is one of the three people who basically came up with the SAS. He is an Irishman, and in the series, he is presented as having a little bit of a temper and being kind of a fucking psychopath, right? But he is very effective. And there is this interesting... So when I was... when you watch something historical, you always inevitably try to find out, like, well, what is real here and what is not real, right? And
how much artistic license is there?
Yeah. And the funny thing about the SAS show is that a lot of the craziest shit that happens is actually what really happened. Whereas a lot of like the normal shit that you're like, oh, this seems pretty like normal and viable for what could be real. It's like, no. They put that in to make it make sense. Because there was so much fucking madness going on that you're like, oh, okay. Like, no, they did that crazy shit. It's the normal shit that they didn't do. So either way, there was a funny thing where I guess a lot of people were annoyed because this Patty Main character, there's an implication of homosexuality, right? Now, here's the thing. No one ever uses the word homosexual. No one ever calls Patty Main gay. He is not persecuted for being gay. I mean, he's persecuted for being Irish, which was a thing of the time. But he was not persecuted for being gay. He wasn't effeminate. He was a fucking manly man if I ever saw one. He kicked the shit out of everybody. At one point, they get a whole unit of French recruits that they're supposed to train, and he gets pissed off with them, and he fights the entire unit at one point in a pub-like setting, right? And doesn't even lose badly. Like, so it's a fascinating character because there is this strange implication that maybe he was gay, but it's apparently like they say that that's not really the historical people are like, that's not how really how he was, and that's the creative license. But then when I was watching the show, I thought to myself, right, but at no point does anyone call him gay. Like, so the thing is that he is very close to another soldier, very close, right? There's no kissing, there's no hand holding, there is nothing that would express homosexuality. They are just exceptionally close. And when he dies, right, Patty Main is heartbroken. I guess spoilers. Patty Main is heartbroken by it, right? And I watched this thing and I was like, and I fell for the same sort of trap where I was like, oh, were they gay? Did they have a thing going on? And I was waiting for it to become something, like, because I didn't know the history at all. So I was waiting for it to become something, which it doesn't. And throughout the show, they kind of reference that Patty Main is a certain type of man. But when they say that, they're fairly non-specific. They could mean Irish psychopath. They could mean mad bastard. They could mean a lot of things. He's also hilariously effective at blowing up Nazi shit, right? But there is this implication that he is gay. And I was kind of sitting there going, you know what? Is this an actual implication, or is this us bringing our own bias to the table? Because is Patty Main close to this other character? Yes. Is he heartbroken when he dies? Yes. But Joe, I would be heartbroken if something happened to you. The same way that I think that you would be heartbroken if something happened to me. And if we were in a war setting where it was just the two of us depending on each other in a larger theater of fucking chaos and one of us died, I think the other person would be pretty goddamn fucking lost, right? So I was wondering if the weakness of the audience is not understanding this concept that there could be other types of love, and that isn't just, oh, he's gay, he's not straight, he's gay. Because I do remember is it Aristotle or Socrates where they talked about the different kinds of love, and there's a love between soldiers, and there's a love between comrades, and there's a love between a man and his wife, and there's all these different kinds of loves that have nothing to do with sexual pleasure, right? So I found it fascinating, is that word again, that we all fell for the same trap. We all said, "Ooh, is Patty Mayne gay?" But then it's like, no, I don't. I mean, I'm not saying that he wasn't. There's a possibility, but there's just as much a possibility that Patty Mayne was just so close to this guy. And he's different from the people he's with because he's a poet, and he seems to be far more educated, and he's far more well-read, than a lot of the other people. So yes, he found somebody who connected with him. But I found it interesting in that we all instantly were like, "Oh, is he gay?" And it's like, well, no, that word is never used. And when I went back and I watched it again to be like, was this my bias or was something said? And I realized nothing is ever said. It's all sort of implication of your own bias. These two men are exceptionally close. So it's kind of a weird thing that I noticed. And it wasn't just me. It was like kind of everybody, but our modern day bias can't see the idea that you could have men. This is like the whole 300. Remember the 300?
How could I ever forget?
Exactly.
It spawned one of your favorite memes of a bouncing log going through a windshield.
I know. This is Sparta. But never do I watch that movie and have someone be like, "Oh, those Spartans are so gay." Whereas there is something very sort of homoerotic about a lot of their emotions for each other, right? And it's kind of like it's you realize you're bringing your own bias to the table of a culture that was different than yours, So yes. Other than that, the Rogue SAS series is really, really good. I mean, I'm a big World War II. I hate the word buff, but I'm not happy about World War II. But I'm very interested in World War II stories, and it has been a really well done series. I've never watched anything that was made by MG, like as far as like a streaming service. I only got the temporary service to watch this show. So I don't even know if they have anything else worth watching. But for this, I actually really quite enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed this as much as the one that Hanks and Spielberg did about the
Masters of the Air.
Masters of the Air. But I mean, honestly, Band of Brothers is still the high watermark for fucking everything.
Well, sure.
But Masters of the Air, I think I enjoyed this as much as Masters of the Air. And there's a second season too. But the thing is, now that I know the history, it's very sad because I knew there was a character that was going to die before he died in the show, and I was kind of like, oh, it's like, when is this going to happen? And when the episode started, and I saw things going a certain way, I was like, oh, this is when he dies, isn't it? And that's almost like a weird. You know what? It's not a spoiler because it happened. It's history, but like, I think that when I know the history, it makes it worse for me. It's not a spoiler where I'm like, it's been spoiled for me. It's oh no, it's like, now they're gonna kill that character, and I actually like him. Like one of the three guys. Oh, this is a spoilerific show. One of the three guys who created the SAS died pretty soon after it was created, and the thing that's fascinating about him was that he was the straight-laced one. There was three guys, and basically they refer to themselves as the dreamer, the madman, and the drill sergeant. Essentially, he was the straight-laced one. He was the guy who got shit done. He developed a handheld explosive that they used to blow up these called Lewis bombs that they then went on to use throughout the war. Right? Like this guy was straight-laced. He was clever. He was tough as fuck. Right? He dies early on, and you're left with the madman and the dreamer, and you're kind of like, how the fuck is this gonna run? The thing is, I knew he was gonna die because I read the history, and I was like, shit. I was like, and so when they start kind of going down that pipe where I see the events that are leading toward it, I'm like, oh no, he's gonna die now. And it was like you want it not to happen, because in a narrative structure you want these three heroes to make it through to the end, but it's not, because life doesn't have a narrative hero journey. Sometimes shit just happens, and it's interesting in that respect. How, like, the how something is based on reality versus how something is just fiction. In fiction, the heroes make it, and if they don't make it, they don't make it for a reason. Like they have to aid another hero's journey. Like it's the whole Uncle Ben has to die. Why? Because with great power comes great responsibility. Right? Uncle Ben has to die. That's part of Spider-Man's journey. Right? But I mean, in reality, people die all the time for no fucking reason. It's random. Or at least we don't have the power of the gods to understand, the greater storyline narrative that it is part of. So when you're watching a show based off of reality, shit happens, and you're like, fuck, why did that character die? And you feel bad because you like the character, you wanted more time with the character is very well done. So, yes. But what are your thoughts on that idea of bringing your own bias to something and seeing something that might not necessarily be there?
Well, I think it's certainly something that happens a lot. I think there has been this idea that, you can have affection for somebody without it having to become a romantic or anything beyond that. I mean, I just rewatched, as a bit of a preview, not these episodes won't come out until next year, but we're about to embark, Doug and I, on 6 of the original Star Trek films, so the entire run plus Generations, and so I've started watching them again, and I just watched Star Trek the motion picture, which is a great film.
It is.
And there is a part in that when they're talking about V'ger where Spock kind of shoots into it and then mind melds with it, which is almost comical. Luckily, the movie is so dead serious that you don't laugh at it, but it is, when you actually think about it, completely ridiculous. But anyway, he mind melds with this humongous thing before they know what it is. And when they bring him back on the ship, he's catatonic for a little bit, and then when he kind of wakes up, he's talking to Kirk, and he says V'ger is trying to... The idea of emotion is beyond it, and he holds Kirk's hand in a way that I'm sure a modern audience, some people go, oh, what are they, dating? Because he's holding it with a lot of... And he says to him that V'ger can't experience this emotion. He doesn't specify what it is. So you don't know what it is. And these are characters that have a long history and clearly care about each other. So I'm sure some would infer one thing to that. If they're so inclined to think that any male-to-male physical contact must mean homosexuality, because for some people that's what it is. They can't understand that somebody might be able to touch someone else without it being...
Are these the same people that are like, men and women can't be friends?
Look, I can't understand why certain people react the way they do to certain things. What I'm saying is, that there are people who, if they see a man hold another man's hand in any way, that they will jump to, oh, they must be gay.
Well, it's like
as
men
opposed
weeping.
to understanding...
When is it okay for men to weep? And I mean, like, full on weep.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. The idea of expressing emotion to some people
that's why
is a sign of weakness.
Yeah, in my book, I have an aspect in there where there are these two characters, these two clones that are essentially like Captain America. Like, physically, they're like Captain America. They're not good like Captain America, but one of them is a little more childlike. But they're both basically like super beings. And they, when they lose one of the clones in the book, that this one super being character, he cries. He cries like a child, because this whole idea is that he doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want to lose the people that matter to him. And this is the thing that he is not, as much like Superman, he's not protected from. He still feels lost. And it's that thing, it's like we have this culture where men are not supposed to weep, men are not supposed to feel. It's like, but it used to be that, like, men did weep. Like, we had emotions. We were meant to be strong, but we were also, we were allowed to have the pantheon of emotions. And like, I'm trying to figure out when that was taken away from us. That this idea was that, oh, manly men don't cry, or manly men don't hold hands.
Okay.
Manly men.
All right. Well, hold on. Let's
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's be clear about this. I don't think it was ever taken away from anybody. Because I think that you would find throughout all time exactly what you were talking about, that people who've been to war together will discuss the fact they will express emotion and caring for other men with no hesitation.
Yeah, they have a different connection because of what they've gone through.
Yes. Now, what you're talking about is the popular media depiction of what manliness is. And yes, that has changed depending on the different, I don't know, societal kind of responses to things. So I guess there were let's go back to the original question is, are we inferring something? Well, according to you, there's never an explicit mention of any type of romantic connection that is made. Then
no, they're just very, very close.
Okay, so then if you read that as they're gay, then you are inferring something, because the series is not, I don't think, affection, closeness, or anything like that between...
You can read it, but this is one of those things where they walk the line.
Well, and it's probably intentional to make you sit there and react and think about what your reaction is. Because, as you say, if it's never explicitly spelled out, then it is purely what you're choosing to map onto those people, and then you have to sit there and wonder why.
And there's people who got angry about it, and they were saying, his depiction, he was not like that. He was a manly man, and his men loved him, and blah blah blah. And you're like, okay, but at no point. I mean, other than the fact they do play him as to be psychotic for a while there until he kind of softens up. I was like. If anything, I would be more... If he was a relative of mine, I'd be more upset about how fucking crazy they depict him as. And suicidal.
Well, but that tells
beyond
me that...
his affection for these people that he's with, you kind of look at it and you go, that's all he has. There's nothing else in his life. He doesn't have a wife or kids. Like, these are the people that are close to him.
So then I think that betrays what the viewer's biases towards affectionate men are. If your only response to seeing a man or someone who is presented as a man, that they have to be closed off, I don't know, macho and insensitive, well, then I'm sorry for you, because that's pretty sad. Because if you think that implies that somebody is less manly, then I'm very sorry that you have been exposed to men who failed you in terms of what people can be. So yes, I would say it's all inference. If, based on what you're telling me, if at no point there is anything indicated that there is, forget even homosexuality, anything that's beyond, military brotherhood or whatever, I don't know, like you said, there's a term for it, whatever it is, the military platonacy or whatever. If there's nothing that's explicitly said by that, and he is shown to be every bit as capable and competent as everybody else in the unit, then it is what you're inferring. And that's it. It's that simple.
It was interesting because I watched it and I had that reaction, and then I watched it again and I was like, wait a minute, it's like they're bringing their own thing to. I'm bringing my own thing to this. They're not saying it is either or.
Right.
They're drawing attention to it.
That's what I think. I think you're correct that's what it is. So, if somebody responds to that thinking that it's somehow disrespectful, I think that says more about that person than it does about the character or the actual individual.
Yeah, because on what you're honestly, he's not incapable. I mean, he is one of the badasses of the series.
Yeah, well, this sounds like the typical thing that men have to be a certain way, and if they're not, then they're not men. It's the same way that it sounds very much like a variation on something that you hear a lot from black men, or actually black individuals of any type, who say, I'm not seen as black enough by my community, even though they are absolutely black. But because they don't act a certain way or do the same things that apparently some people in their community think, they are less than whatever they're supposed to be. This is the same thing. So I would say it's absolutely somebody inferring something that tells you more about them than it does about the character or the person. That seems pretty straightforward to me. Based on what you're telling me, there's nothing that goes beyond. If there was a romantic scene, and that wasn't, he was,
no, not yet. I mean, I've watched season 1, and there never was. So,
well, barring that happening, from what you've told me, that is absolutely on the viewer inferring something that isn't there. And that betrays the bias and the, what I would call, unreasonable expectations of what a man is by the person watching.
The other weird thing about this series is the other lead, the dreamer. He sounds and acts like Matt Smith so much. You could so easily stick Matt Smith in that role, and it would seamlessly move back and forth. It's
Well,
a
maybe
really,
they wanted him for it.
I don't know, but like it's a
Maybe,
really.
maybe
The thing
they
is,
offered it to him first and wrote it for him. That
having
happens, and
watched-
they don't get the person.
Matt Smith play Philip in The Crown, right? Which is a World War II era young military man. Man, it's so like, and my wife was like, I was like, you're just saying that because of the accent. I'm like, no, they talk very similarly. I was like, they have a similar stature. Like, there's just a lot about them that was so weird. I kept thinking, dude, that could be Matt Smith. If you told me that guy was related to Matt Smith, it was his brother or something, I'd be like, oh yeah, totally, that makes total sense. So, but no, it was a really good series. I just wanted to bring that notion because I thought it was fascinating that even I fell for that trap. Where it's you look at something, and if you look at something for at its face value, what it's saying to you, you have to realize that your own biases are stepping in to make conclusions that might not be there.
Okay, but I think there's a difference. I think there's two different things. One is to read it superficially without. Okay, so if I watched this series, let's say I had watched it with no knowledge of the real people.
Yeah.
Based on what you're telling me, I probably would have been, I wonder if these two were together.
I wonder if he was gay. Yeah.
Now, there's a difference, though, when you go from that to thinking that it somehow demeans the manliness of the character or changes the way that people got angry about it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So that's something else. Whereas, I look.
And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying that he wasn't.
Let's just give you
I'm
a
just
real-world
saying that
example of this.
Yeah.
As somebody who was not born in California and now lives here, lots of people here are way, way more affectionate with each other than anything I'm ever used to. I never hugged friends. I never told friends I loved them. At least not often. Everybody does it out here. And I never get used to it.
I just don't think you were close enough. That's why.
Maybe, but what I'm saying is
I hug you all the time. Every time I see you.
Yeah, but you're probably the only person. I don't know if I'd say it makes me uncomfortable. I don't. Look, now that I've lived here for a while, it really doesn't because it's mine.
You're like, no, go ahead, hug away. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care. Whatever. At this point, I'm like, whatever. But at first, I was taken aback because I'm like, that's what is this? So there's that difference where it's something that seems a certain way. So to me, a lot of affection or physical contact seems to mean something, but there's a difference between that. Again, if I didn't know anything about the person,
well, it's
I would maybe,
you read stuff about like soldiers bathing together, and a complete lack of kind of like there's no tension of nudity. Like if you're with a bunch of your male friends and you all have to take your clothes off in front of each other, there's a weirdness about it. You don't know what it is, but there's a weirdness about it. Whereas in the military, it's like you have all these guys stripping down in front of each other for various situations. I don't care, and that's one of the things. That's why that scene in Starship Troopers where they're all naked in the shower and nobody gives a shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're like, that is one of the fascinating things about his vision of this future, where it's like, you're all soldiers. Nobody cares. Nobody's looking at anybody else. You're all just there showering after getting the shit kicked out of you. Right? Like I like that aspect of the thing where it's like you're kind of beyond that. It's not that Diz doesn't want to fuck the shit out of Johnny Rico, but in that situation, that's not weird. It's not weird to see everybody naked.
No.
Nudity is not stigmatized.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it is, you do map your kind of preconceptions onto something, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing until it crosses over into somebody saying, oh, he wasn't like that, because I think that's based in the idea that somehow if he was in fact and listen, there's also this thing, which is absolutely something that happened, where homosexual relationships happened with men who otherwise were heterosexual when they were not out at war.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing. I'm not saying that it wasn't a possibility. I'm just saying that when you take the
angry reaction is based on the idea that somehow homosexuality dilutes manlyhood.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where I'm like, now you have to look at yourself because something's wrong with you. Just
Yeah.
thinking, watching two affectionate men and thinking, oh, I wonder if they're together. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Or
The same way that
having a
some
man
people,
who mourns so completely for the
well,
death
and
of
here's the
another
thing.
man.
My bet would be that people who are veterans would see nothing in that scene beyond what it is because they lived that experience.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if many people who were actually in combat with others look at that scene and wouldn't even for a minute infer anything beyond these were two people who were very close because they were living and dying literally, possibly together every minute of their lives in the middle of a high-stress situation. And that changes a bond between people in ways that people who never were in combat cannot possibly understand. Period. So, yes, we take our experiences and what we see and we infer them. But there's a difference between seeing something and then thinking, oh, okay, and seeing something and reacting and not understanding what that says about you. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
Different things. So, that's what I would say.
And well, that's all I got.
Well, I don't remember. I think it was 2, 3, 4 shows ago. You know that movie, The Substance? We were talking about it.
Yes.
It came
yes,
up,
right. Demi
and
Moore.
I didn't really have a desire to see it all that much. I was kind of like, eh. doesn't
Did
look
you
that
watch The
interesting to me.
Substance?
I did, and I'll tell you why. Two people whose opinions
Yeah.
on movies I respect had the opposite reactions.
I
One
have
thought
to
it was
say something
terrible.
About,
Yeah.
about that movie.
Did you see
I
it?
think it's interesting. I didn't know I didn't. I think it's interesting. I've
Okay.
seen scenes of it because I was really fucking curious as to what the hell was going on. I've seen
I-
scenes and I watched a few long video reviews that broke
Yes.
down a lot about it.
Yes.
But I have to admit, the main reason I was interested in that movie is because I really think that young woman is really attractive.
Margaret Qualley.
What's her? Yeah, and it's
Margaret Qualley.
because
Yeah, she's what do you call it? She's Annie McDowell's daughter.
yeah,
A lot of
I
people
grew
were
up
like, why
with
didn't
Annie
Annie McDowell
McDowell.
do the older version? And I understand why.
Oh man, that would have been fucking weird, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't think I would suspect. Just to jump to a point of it, Demi Moore is fully nude front and back in this with no apparently glamoring of any kind, which is I have nothing but respect for because
And she looks great.
she looks great, but you can tell that she's 60 years old.
But
And
she
that is
look-
not
and
something.
and this is the whole stigma. The stigma of age, I think, is what it is. It's like, do you expect a 60-year-old woman to look like a 20-year-old?
I would say some people would, but especially
For her
in a movie
age,
where you
she looks
have.
amazing.
I'm not saying she doesn't. What I'm saying is most actresses are not going to do that.
Don't wanna do that,
Especially when they're sharing scenes with another actress who is in probably the best shape that she'll ever be in her entire life.
She looks really good. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I've always liked
Yeah.
Demi Moore as an actress. I've always thought she was good. But
Oh,
man,
she's listen. She's
I
always
don't-
one of those people who could do funny and who could do serious, and that's she's one of the she's one of the kind of the old school actresses that I really like. She's in the same camp as Bruce Willis, who could play ridiculously
Yes.
funny and badass,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yes. So,
But yes,
so
Margaret
based on these
Qualley
two
is-
reviews
she's a
that were
looker.
completely on the opposite sides,
That
I was
just
like,
piqued your
okay.
interest.
yes, it did because I'm just like both of these people usually agree, and they're both making very good points. So I don't know where I'm going to fall on this. And the interesting part is I agree with both of them because from one perspective, it is as a piece of filmmaking, it is excellent. In terms of the message behind it, it is excellent. It also has one of the biggest logical problems that will destroy it for anybody who thinks about it for more than 2 seconds. And I think that's where it's going to fall apart for a lot of people.
Well, there's a lot. Isn't there a logic element in there where if you sit there and go, well, why didn't you do this or why didn't you just do that? Like, there's something like that in there that makes
The
some sense.
whole inciting thing makes no sense, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
So, movie starts off, and we see it's basically an overhead shot of, the Walk of Fame stars they have in Hollywood. So you see them kind of laying this one out. Demi Moore plays a character named Elizabeth Sparkle, and so you see her star being put down, and all these people are really cheering. They're all thrilled, and they love her. And then you see kind of time pass, and as time passes, people are getting older, and the star starts getting a little bit weathered, and people are walking by, and it's still in good shape. And then you see like a couple of cracks start to form. And then as people are walking over it, they're looking down and, oh, yeah, remember her? And they keep walking, and they go on, and time goes on. And eventually it's really cracked and kind of like somebody drops their food on it. and somebody walks by and says, "Who was that?" I don't know. And they just keep walking, which of course this is basically what the whole movie is about, that actresses often lose any relevance once they get to a certain age. And that's the whole premise of the movie. That's the message of the film, is actresses and women, if you want to write large with it, tend to be disregarded once their looks start to fade.
They start getting grandma roles at 40.
Or none at all. So
or none at all,
basically, yeah. So Demi Moore, we then see her at her current age. Although they talk about her, I think she's meant to be like 50 or early 50s.
Doesn't she have like isn't it like an aerobics show or something like that?
Yes, that's what we see. We see her doing an aerobics show with women who look her age. And I mean, she's in great shape. Demi Moore is in great shape. And so she's doing all the stuff, and I was like, okay, they're going to show her kind of getting really tired. They're going to show, like, anything. No, she's fine. She goes through it, and she's very energetic, and she leads the show. And then she's looking for a bathroom because she just drank a bunch of water, and the women's bathroom is out of order, so she kind of goes into the men's bathroom, and she goes into a stall. And while she's in the stall, Dennis Quaid comes in, and Dennis Quaid is playing a character that is so over-the-top scumbag.
I saw. He's really... he's playing Kyle MacLachlan He's playing Kyle MacLachlan from Showgirls.
But so far worse. The one clip I was going to pull is so disgusting because he's eating while he's talking that even I couldn't listen to it. But I have a clip that basically, it's essentially conveying the same message, except the difference is in this clip, you don't know if he's talking about Elizabeth Sparkle or another actress, and later he's telling her the same thing to her face. But here's the clip of him, because she's in the bathroom, he doesn't know she's in there, and he just comes in to use the urinal, and she overhears him saying this on the phone.
I don't care. Every fucking young girl in this fucking town, in the next few weeks. Look, make it simple. We need her young. We need her hot. We need her now. How the old bitch has been able to stick around for this long. That's the fucking mystery to me. Oh, Oscar winner, my ass. When was that? Back in the 30s? What? For King Kong? No. I don't give a fuck what we promised her. This is network TV, not a fucking charity. Find me somebody new. Now.
Hey, did you know that a woman's fertility starts to decrease about the age of 25?
How old is Jennifer? You better get busy.
Obviously, she overhears this, comes out, and then we cut to a lunch that he's having with her, where he's essentially saying the same thing, just not as directly. And by the way, that shot where he's talking, it's extreme close-up with like a fisheye, so his face is all distorted. It's almost like they put the camera right on his face. It's disgusting. But I think it's that he's supposed to be disgusting. And so then there's a lunch where he's basically talking to her, and he's like, well, everybody thinks they're going to last forever in this town, but, rejuvenation is the name of the game. And at 50, that stops. And she says, what stops? And he's like, I got to go. And he just leaves. So obviously what he's telling her without telling her is, we're about to dump you from this program. We need to find somebody new who's young. We're going to do the same thing, but with somebody who's younger. So after that lunch, she's driving, and she sees a sign for her show. And it's kind of like ragged, and I think they're about to pull it down, and she doesn't see another car that runs a stop sign or something and hits into her and flips the car a whole bunch of times. Now, this is the point where some people say this is a Jacob's Ladder thing, where she had to have died because it makes no sense that she wasn't injured from this accident. I don't think so. I think this movie, you just have to accept that there is no reality to it, that this is obviously a parable or whatever. It's a
but the fact that there's very specifically a car accident there.
A horrific car accident that you can't believe she wouldn't have more than a couple of bruises from.
Yes,
and
there's got to be. Yes, there's got to be a.
There's got to be something, but or she just had a car with a really good safety system. I mean, it does happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, the doctor's like, "Wow, you got really lucky. Not even a broken bone." And so she's being examined by the nurse, and the nurse is a very weird-looking, Ken doll-looking guy, and he kind of looks at her spine.
I've seen this clip. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, "Oh, you'd be a perfect candidate." And he slips her this card that says the substance, and it has a phone number on it. And so she she looks at sorry, it's a USB stick it says the substance that has a phone number. And on the thing, it says, on this paper, it says it changed my life. And as she's coming home, she runs into this guy that she hasn't obviously seen since high school. And he's like, wow, you look amazing. Holy crap, I haven't seen you in forever. And he's like, oh, well, here's my number if you ever want to get together. And she's nice to him, and just says, okay. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm nobody and you're a big star. But, if you ever feel like getting a drink, just let me know. And so she gets back to her house, and she's kind of looking. She's got this big frame picture of herself when she was younger. She's got these flowers that say, thanks for all you've done for us. That's basically like, we're getting rid of you type of thing. And so she looks at the USB stick, and she pops it into the TV just to see what it says. And this is the commercial that plays. So this is basically the ad that's on the USB stick.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA, starting a new cellular division that will release another version of yourself. This is the substance. You are the Matrix. Everything comes from you, and everything is you. This is simply a better version of yourself. You just have to share. 1 week for one, and 1 week for the other. A perfect balance of 7 days each. The one and only thing not to forget. You are one. You can't escape from yourself.
So that's the tape that basically explains what it is. And at first her reaction is bullshit, and she throws it away. And she's not going to do anything with it. And then the next day she is essentially fired. They give her a going away thing, and they're like, thanks for everything. And then she goes home and she looks at her picture, and and then she kind of she's just looking at like a little snow globe of herself that she must have gotten when she was a much younger actress. And she calls the number and says, okay, I'm interested. And they're like, all right, well, they send her a package that says, go to this place, pick this thing up. And it's a room with a bunch of automatic safety deposit boxes. And she gets the kit, and in the kit is all this stuff. And basically it's the first thing is the activator, and it says only use this once. It says activator, only use once. And then there's 2 packets of food, because you have to intravenously feed the other body while you're out for the 7 days.
This aspect of it, it just feels like a Cronenberg movie at this point.
Oh, it's very much a Cronenberg movie. So she takes the stuff, she takes the activator, and then she basically collapses, and her body splits down her spine, and out of her body comes a second woman, which is Margaret Qualley, which is not her specifically, because this is the thing, is I wasn't really sure. Thing
I didn't understand. Are they the same person?
No.
Do they have the same consciousness? Are they actually different people?
The only thing they could be are clones in the real sense.
But the question is, then what does she get out of it then?
And that's the biggest problem with the movie. It makes no sense that she would do. No person. The motivation for doing this, the only one that's given, comes later, and you'll hear a bit of it. But they don't give it to you. Yeah, because
otherwise
really
you would do this once,
front.
and then you would go, "Fuck, I'm never doing that again."
Yeah, what they infer later, without directly saying this is why she did it, is that she's just so lonely that she wanted another version of herself. It doesn't make sense. This is the thing is...
Yeah, okay.
You have to throw it out.
That's the plot hole. Got it.
And it's a massive one because, this process is miserable. Like, it's not like she just splits off and it's like 1 second of pain. It is horrific to watch. Like, she is in agonizing pain.
I've seen clips. It is quite horrific.
Yeah. So then Margaret Qualley pops out, and she is wearing, I didn't realize this, but I thought there was something off. Because Margaret Qualley's proportions were not what the movie was. And apparently they made she says, are the best pair of prosthetic breasts ever, because she's like, yeah, there isn't enough magic in the world to give me a rack like Demi Moore. So they had to make me boobs. Which is great.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
I-
you know what? That
No,
totally
'cause-
tracks. I just looked that
Yeah,
up.
I've
and
seen
yeah.
her in other stuff, and I'm like, that's not her body type. So I thought it was CG. It is not. It is prosthetics. So they're really
Wow,
good.
That is an
They look
amazing prosthetic.
exceptional. Yes. So this other version comes out, and she has to sew Demi Moore's back up. Here's another thing, and this is again where you if you actually examine this, it makes no sense. This new being instantly knows to sew her up, how to put the intravenous stuff in. So you don't. How does she know?
Even
any
though
of
Demi
this?
Moore wasn't trained how to do this, she was just told that she would have to feed them, right?
Yes. So yeah, there's no instructions left that we ever see. She just knows to do it. So there is some, and again, I think this is one of those things where you're just not supposed to look at it with logic. You just have to let these things
it's
go.
a metaphor.
Exactly. And so she sews her up, and then she starts like having these problems. This is Sue. Sue is the other version, or the other person. And Sue like starts having nosebleeds, and she looks at this thing that says, what's it called? It's called the, not sustenance. There's something, she has to extract spinal fluid. Stabilizer. There it is. Stabilizer. So she has to extract 7 vials of spinal fluid from Demi Moore by putting basically a spinal tap needle into her and extracting the spinal fluid. And she has to inject herself with that every day. Not in the spine, though, in the leg or wherever. Which, again, if you just think about that, makes no sense. But don't worry about that. That's what I'm saying is if you get hung up on the rules, which,
yeah, but,
don't get me
this
wrong,
is
a
the
lot of
whole
people
this is
do.
the whole rules of magic. Just imagine that it's a demon, and you'd be fine.
The odd part is why. I mean, I guess they just didn't care. I guess they just were like, well, you're either going to lift this thing or you're not. Because these are such easily solved problems. You could just have a card that says, you know, for the other, do this. But it doesn't. So you sit there and go, well, how would she know to do that? And that's where I think a lot of people, if they go into this not realizing what it is, might not make it through it because you're going to be asking a lot of questions. So anyway, Sue starts wandering around and somehow knows to go do a TV audition to replace the
Which
workout
makes
show.
you think that she has some of Demi Moore's memories.
And you would think that, except there's never anything that gives you that indication. The way that Demi Moore, you'll hear clips, talks about her as if she's a rival. You know, and to the point where the guy on the phone is going to say to her, you'll hear him say, you're the same person. And Demi Moore's like, she's a selfish bitch. Like, okay, this is, you know, they obviously don't, or it's like race memory, you know, like instinct or whatever. So, of course, Dennis Quaid sees her and goes, yep, you've got the job because you're young and hot. And so, you know, so she gets the job, and, you know, it's all these, there's a lot of very, very sexual imagery, which I think is supposed to be, yes, this is how people are viewed, of Margaret Qualley, where they're doing these close-ups on her ass and her bust and all that. She's doing this workout that is so overly sexualized that it is, it reminds me of that Killer Workout movie, where it's just almost ridiculous what's going on. And before I go any further, so she gets the job, she's going along, and she's, you know, just living it up. And then on the other side, Demi Moore is kind of just hanging around and watching TV and, you know, doesn't really know what to do now because she doesn't have work. But I guess Sue is paying for the apartment. Like, none of this is made clear, so I don't know. But there is a point where Sue realizes, as anybody would, that she just has a body laying on her floor. And if she wants to have guys over, that's probably not going to look good. So she builds this kind of hideaway space to put Demi Moore's or Elizabeth's body into while she's using her 7 days. And she like takes down her picture and kind of redoes the apartment a bit. And she's got the show going and everything's going great. And then she brings this guy over at one point, and she needs to switch. And the guy and her are about to have sex, so she's like, you know what? I just need a couple more hours. And so she goes past the 7-hour mark by just a bit. And what she does is she extracts just a little bit more spinal fluid from her. And so then then she switches back the next day, and Demi Moore comes to, and one of her fingers is zombified, like it's gnarled and old and diseased and terrible looking. And so she gets really pissed off, and she calls the number because she wants to find out how to reverse it. And this is the phone call where she's basically trying to find out how she can get her finger to go back to normal.
200 hours later. Yes, hi. This is Elizabeth Sparkle. I'm 503.
Yes.
Yes, hi. There's been a slight misuse of the substance. A few extra hours were accidentally used, causing an alteration. So I'm just looking for the procedure to reverse it.
What has been used on one side is lost on the other side. There's no going back.
No, I don't know what she was thinking. And obviously, she was drunk.
Remember, there is no
Oh yeah, this isn't going to work out at all.
Well, and there again, this is where you run into this problem, because she obviously is respecting the balance. What is she supposed to do? Leave a note for the other one to say, stop doing that?
Hey, stop fucking
You know what I mean?
around. Yeah, because
Yeah,
honestly,
because
she's the one that's going to eat it.
Yeah, and the way he says that is almost like it's almost like the way this movie would work a little better is if inside their head it was like the Hulk with Banner and the Hulk kind of fighting each other. Where you would see the two of them and she's like, stop using it up. And she's like, fuck you. You're not doing anything. I'm earning all the money. I'll use whatever I want. Like there should be something like that, because there is no communication between the two of them. So even though, yes, when he says you're a one, what he means is it's the same DNA, that she was birthed of the same process DNA-wise that got Demi Moore, but she's not the same person. So how is Demi Moore supposed to tell her? Because then I thought, okay, she's going to leave her a note saying, hey, you're fucking with my body. Stop doing this. She doesn't do anything. She just gets angry about it and goes and gets her refill kit.
Question. Does she have to do this? Can she stop?
No. Well, no. All right, we're going to get to that. No, she can, but there's a catch to it. So she goes and gets the refill kit, and, she's like looking at her finger, and so she decides to call that guy to go out with him, the guy she ran into earlier. But before she does that, she's on her way back with the refill kit. She stops in because she thinks she hears somebody following her. So she stops into this little kind of hole-in-the-wall diner, because the place where she has to go pick it up is in a really bad part of town, to the point where the door that opens up that you go into it only half opens, so she has to crawl under it to go in. And then you go into this room, and it looks like something out of, THX 1138. So it's crazy. But she's coming back, and she kind of darts into this diner because she wants to be around where people are. And she's sitting there, and she's waiting for a coffee, and she sees this old man just sitting there, and she's looking at him, and he's looking at her. And then he starts to talk to her. And what you won't get out of the clip is at one point, she sees a birthmark on his hand and realizes that he's the old version of the young nurse who first gave her the USB stick in the hospital. So that is the young version working as a nurse, and this is the old man who is very old looking. He looks like he's probably in his 70s or 80s, and he starts talking to her about obviously being in the same, if using the substance.
It's long, isn't it?
Excuse me?
7 days.
Did you follow me here?
I was just curious to find out how things were going for you. Each time you feel a little more lonely. Don't you think?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
It gets harder each time to remember that you still deserve to exist. That this part of yourself is still worth something, that you still matter. Has she started yet? Eating away at you?
And again, this is where it brings up this thing of why would anyone do this? Because it just doesn't. I mean, this guy looks miserable.
Unless some part of your unconsciousness were encapsulated in that other body.
Which there's no indication there is. So she goes home, and she's getting dressed to go out on this date with the guy. And she gets dressed, and she's getting ready to go, and then she sees the big billboard outside of her apartment that has the young version that has Sue on there with the new show. And so she starts trying to, like, redress herself to look younger and younger, and she finally just doesn't go because everything she's doing is just making her look worse and worse, and she just kind of has this breakdown. And so she doesn't go on the date. She kind of stands the guy up, and then the next day we see Sue, and she's on the, at the show, and then she does this move, and she sees this weird lump on her butt that nobody else seems to see. And then they stop taping, and you hear the guy say, oh, they said they saw an anomaly on the tape. We'll take it frame by frame and see if we can see it. And she says, I have to go to the bathroom. And she kind of just runs out and looks. And she sees this lump under her skin, and she moves it up to her belly button, puts her fingers into her belly button, and pulls out a leg of chicken, and then wakes up, and it was obviously a dream. And then goes out, or she doesn't wake up. She switches back. So this was, I think, a dream she was having in her unswitched version, where she's dormant. Because she comes out of the room and she looks, and there's just like empty chicken bones, like Demi Moore's eating like shit and just like sloughing around. And so she's having, it's intruding on her consciousness somehow. So there is some crossover, but it seems so vague and nightmarish that it isn't really communication. It's more that they somewhat know the effect they're having on each other. Because then she calls, I didn't bother with this, it's a very short call, but she calls the same number and says, hey, she's eating like shit, so I don't have enough time. I'm not able to enjoy my time. All I'm doing is working. And the guy's like, hey, respect the balance. What do you want from me? There's one side or the other. You have to switch every 7 days. And so she's like, you know what? She gets offered this big promotion to do like the New Year's Eve show, and she's like, you know what? I'm going to need a little more time. And so she just starts extracting more and more spinal fluid from a wound that looks increasingly worse and worse. And so she's going along, and Demi Moore comes out again. And now half of her body, she almost looks like she's becoming Two-Face, where half of her body is withered and looks like she's 90, and like her leg looks like a goblin's leg. And so she calls the number again, and this goes to your question about, well, can you stop this thing? So she calls, because now she's really pissed, because she can barely walk.
She didn't respect the balance. She's stealing more and more time from me, completely, without consideration of the consequences. She's a selfish bitch.
Would you like to stop?
Stop.
You are the Matrix. If you are not satisfied, you can put an end to the experience and go back to being just you on your own. Would you like to stop?
Will it go back to the way it was before?
What has been transferred won't come back, but you can stop the experience as of now. Would you like to stop? To go back to being just you on your own?
I can't stop.
I don't understand why you wouldn't.
This just needs to be respected.
So respect it.
Yeah, this is the problem. Is it just doesn't, like, you sitting there. And the other thing is, she hasn't paid them any money. There's no indication of why these people are even doing this.
It's almost like they're running a science experiment.
Well, I mean, he calls it an experience, but I think that is the idea. But you never have any idea of what it's for. You never see any of these people or anything, which again, just, it is the magical realism thing where you just have to throw that out. But I think this is a problem for a lot of people because she is clearly just being abused, and you sit there and go, what was the benefit of this from the beginning? Because it was very clear that they were not going to be the same person. If she was living in the other body, you would understand it, or that there was some benefit
I
to
thought
her.
that's what it was. Is she would be living in the other body.
No. So, I mean, like I said, she could barely walk.
Unless
in the kitchen.
hold on. Unless she is living in the other body,
the
other body, she is a selfish bitch.
Well, I think the idea, if there is one for that, is that is the true version of herself. That she thinks that she's a better person than she is, but this is in fact who she is. So I think the only way it makes sense is that she's getting a look at what she actually is, as opposed to, most people think they're good people, when in fact most of us actually aren't. We're actually very greedy, selfish people in the end. But I think that this is kind of, that's how I read it, is that she thought that it would be like having a younger version that would be helping her, instead of what actually comes out, which is a terrible version of herself. But that may very well, because we have no idea what she was like when she was younger. We see nothing. We have no clue. And so it's very possible this is exactly how she was. Nobody ever says anything to that effect. There's never anything given to us. That's the thing about this movie, is there's so little extraneous information given, so little detail outside of explicitly what we see, that it's very hard to know. So she then, in response, I think, to the greed of the younger self, goes and gets all these she was given a cookbook with all these extravagant, kind of very fatty recipes, and she just starts drinking and making food and eating and just destroying the apartment and like laughing maniacally as she's watching this interview with the younger version. And at one point the interviewee says, you're the new Elizabeth Sparkle. Did you ever see any of her stuff? And she's like, well, she's of a different generation than me. I remember my mom liking her, and it's like, okay, Demi Moore's or Elizabeth's watching this, and she's getting infuriated, and she's just making all this shit, and she's like yelling at the television. So they're not the same person. There's no way these are the same person, because this is not how a person reacts to another version of themselves. So then there's a point where we find out, so the next switch, the thing comes up and says 3 months later. So now she's left Demi Moore under for 3 months. And she goes to extract. Oh yeah, oh yeah. She goes to extract spinal fluid, and all that comes out is this old, crusty, yellow, like pussy nothing. And so she calls a number, and she's panicking, and she says, she's out of whatever it's called, sustenance, whatever, spinal fluid. But she calls it something, whatever it is. She says there's no more of the sustainer, and they're like, the only way to regenerate it is to switch back. And she's like, there's no other way. And they're like, nope, you guys are the same. The only thing you can do is switch back and let it regenerate. And so she switches back, and Elizabeth comes out, looks in the mirror. And when I tell you she looks like Gollum, she looks like Gollum.
I've seen pictures. She looks terrible.
She is a monster.
She looks like, what? She looks like the witch from The Witches.
From The Witches, yes. Yes, exactly what she looks like, yes. And so she calls the number and says, fuck her, I want to stop. And so they say, all right, we'll leave your final package, go get it. And this humpbacked thing that's covered in head to toe, like, goes down, gets the stuff, and it's a black vial that says Terminator. And so she gets it. Yeah. Okay. And there's a card inside that basically says something like, sorry you didn't enjoy your experience, blah, 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 something like a customer service card. And so she takes out this black vial, drags the body out, stabs her in the chest with it, starts to inject it, and then she hears a voice in her head, because there's nobody there, that says, you will be alone. Are you sure you want to do this? You will be on your own again. And that's what I mean about the only thing that they even possibly give as a reason. But she could have called that guy and gone on a date with him like she was going, like she did the second time. She doesn't have to be alone. She's still enough of a person that's known that I'm sure she could. Again, the logic fails every time.
Yeah, but she doesn't have any faith. She has no confidence. Isn't that what they're trying to say?
I guess the problem is it doesn't. And I'm not saying they have to make it explicit, but I think for an audience not willing to go along with this, it's going to be rough. I mean, outside of the body horror stuff, which is going. But the thing is, they build up to that in a way that you could have drawn normal people in and then hit them with it.
Honestly, I just watched the chicken bone sequence. That you were talking about. That's fucking awful.
Oh, it is. It is. Yes. So she stops injecting the Terminator, and then the Sue wakes up. So now they're separate people in the same space, and beats her to death. So smashes her face into a mirror, kicks her until there's just...
Sue beats up Demi Moore?
She kills her. Yes. She kills Demi Moore.
Got it. So she kills the crowd.
Dead.
Got it.
So again, they are clearly not the same person. So now she goes to her New Year's recital, rehearsal. She goes to the rehearsal thing, and suddenly one of her teeth falls out. And she goes to the bathroom, and then more of her teeth start falling out, and she realizes, I'm in trouble. So she races back to the apartment and takes the activator that says only use once, and she injects herself. I thinking that a newer version of herself will come out. And instead, what comes out, have you seen the picture of the final form?
Isn't it like a mongoloid?
It looks like the Elephant Man with multiple heads.
Oh,
So
yes, I
the
think I've seen that, yes.
Yeah, the Elephant Man with multiple heads version, which is called Monstro Elizasu. A giant title card comes up that says Monstro Elizasu, which is hysterical. And so
God. Hold on, I gotta find an image of this.
Look it up. Yeah, look up
Was
Monstro Elizasu. And see if you that should
Monstro. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, look at that thing.
Oh my God!
Oh
look at
yes, yes. So that thing puts on the New Year's Eve dress somehow, and then cuts out a picture of Demi Moore's face from the giant picture she had, and tapes it over her face, and then goes to the show, which is going on, and goes out on stage. And nobody seems to notice what's going on until the lights come up and she starts talking and everybody starts freaking out. And then her arm falls off and she starts shooting geysers of blood. They apparently used 36,000 gallons of fake blood. And showers the audience on live TV as she is falling apart. At which point a guy comes out, decapitates her with, I want to say a shovel? But then she grows another head out of the area of the stump and runs, goes out on the street, and collapses and explodes into just a goopy mess. And inside the goopy mess is Demi Moore's face, which crawls over with, like, I don't know, octopus organs, whatever. It's just a face crawling along over her Hollywood star. At which point it stops and liquefies and then becomes a liquid that gets cleaned up by a street cleaner, the next day. And then the movie ends. And that's the whole movie. So...
So hold on. So Monstro Elizasu comes out of Sue.
Yes.
So other Sue is still back at the apartment.
Yes, the shell.
Got it.
Unstitched up and dead, you would assume, because
oh, I got it. So Monstro Elizasu doesn't follow the steps. Okay.
Oh no, Monstro Elizasu is insane, and it's basically she is, because she puts on this dress that doesn't fit right and is ripped all over the place, and then puts a picture of Elizabeth over her pumpkin head face, and goes to a live TV show.
Got it.
Yes, copy of a copy. So that's the thing.
It is quite horrible too. I mean, I gotta give him credit.
At that point, it goes so far around the bend that it becomes a masterwork. Because, like I said, at that point, even if a standard viewer had stuck around this far, I think they would walk out here. There is no way they would hang with it because I can see there are certain people, and I have been this person at times where I'm like, I have watched this much of a movie. Because it's like 2 hours and 15,
I'm going to
2:20.
stay till the end.
I'm staying till but I can see somebody going, oh, no, please don't. Okay, she put on the dress. I'm leaving. And just walk out. Because at that point, that there is, because some people I think will think this is all going to be a dream. She's going to wake up. There's no way this is real. Oh no, the movie presents this all as real. So, as I said, I understand why some people think this is a garbage movie and others think it is one of the best horror movies in however long. Because it's both. If you can't jettison the need for logic, you cannot watch this movie. Period. Because, and even for me, it does nag at me a bit that they couldn't take 5 minutes to give a reason for this. Because, yes, I understand it's metaphor. And that's fine, but it's being presented
honestly,
as realism.
I just get a sense that there must be, it's one of those things when they do like a novelization of a movie and you get an internal like the inner voice that you wish you had that explains why things happen. I feel like what's missing is an inner voice. If you knew that some aspect of Demi Moore's character was in there enjoying it, if there was a element of enjoyment, and that's the problem, is that young enjoyment, honestly, this is almost a lesson about taking care of yourself, because the young version doesn't know how to take care of herself and is taking too much time, and then that ends up translating to the older self being decrepit. So if anything, there's a kind of a, what's that?
There's a few ways to look at it. What I would actually be, one thing I have to keep in the back of my mind, and we sort of talked about this to some degree when we were talking earlier about your use of theys, is I am not a woman. I don't know.
Nor are you a celebrity, which is a different class of
Nor am I a celebrity, but either way. Even if I was a celebrity, I still wouldn't be a woman. So I don't know if women or female celebrities would see something very different than I am and understand intuitively more than I would, because number one, I mean, I'm not going to say in my life I've never been judged by my looks. I think everybody is at some point in their lives. But I have never had to, it's never been as much of a pressure for me as I'm sure it has been for beautiful people and or women. Because I assume even handsome people are seen to only be valuable for their looks sometimes, even if they're men or women. But in particular, women are seen as disposable once their looks start to fade. I mean, all you have to do is look at magazines, look at movies, look at television, and see how many older women are portrayed as anything other than matronly or caring or, wise older advisors as opposed to sex symbols. It doesn't still happen all that often. It's better than it was when we were younger, but it's certainly not like you see a lot of it. So a woman might watch this and automatically get something I am not. So I'm accepting that there are probably things in here that are going right past me. The same way that I saw the TV glow had elements that I know went right past me. That's fine. I have no issue with that. I don't need everything to speak to me. Unlike a lot of people, I don't need all media to cater to what I know. So it's fine. I just think that there's going to be segments of the audience who are not into this type of thing that are going to get hung up on the, why are you doing this? And the movie doesn't make that much of an effort to give even the easiest way to explain it. And maybe this is what they are, again, inferring loosely, is that because she's no longer working, she needs some way to make money, and that's what the younger version is going to do. But that's where you need one scene where she's not, like, she's getting bills, and she's like, how am I going to pay these bills? And then she decides to call the number because she knows that a young woman will get a job and be able to make a bunch of money, and that is what happens. And that would provide just enough logic to it that you go, okay, I understand. Most normal people who are not celebrities or super rich understand that you have to worry about bills. So yes, if suddenly you're aged out and you can't work in the only thing that you know, yeah, you're going to grab whatever lifeline is presented to you, even if it is unpleasant. Like, that makes complete sense. But you're never really given that. And that's what I mean, is it doesn't have to be a whole 30-minute explanation. It can be as simple as her sitting there, seeing a bunch of bills, and then coming across the envelope from the substance, or seeing the thumb drive sitting there and going, right? That's all you need. Very simple. 3-minute scene, top to bottom, if it's even that long. But if you can just let all that go and understand that it is metaphor for the way that women are viewed, then, and in terms of the way it escalates the horror from, because there's such a huge, wonderful contrast between how overly draped in the sexuality of Margaret Qualley so much of the middle of this movie is, where she is walking around in nothing and the camera is zooming in on every part of her body.
Oh.
And she looks like she's sculpted out of fucking marble.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then she starts pulling a chicken bone out of her stomach.
I know. I saw that. That's interesting how they basically make it so beautiful, and then at the same time they make it so horrible.
Yeah.
I have an interesting theory on the
Yes.
Sue. They said if
It's
you
Elizabeth
think of it
and
as
Sue.
If you think of it as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Sure.
And I was like, yeah, you know what? That is an interesting thing, because in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, why did Dr. Jekyll keep becoming Mr. Hyde? There's a part of him that likes it. And I wonder if there's this idea that, I wonder if there is, because because nothing is specifically said, you're left theorizing. And that's honestly kind of smart, because we're sitting here debating why would Demi Moore keep doing it, because they don't say it. So it is kind of smart in that respect that it opens the conversation. But if there's any aspect, like if Demi Moore's character is dreaming even that she is Sue, right? Then when she's getting something out of it, she doesn't feel alone. She feels like she is part of a larger Gestalt creature. I mean, she's obviously, she must be getting something out of it, because she doesn't terminate it even when she can, right?
Yes. Now, the only thing that's interesting is there is, I don't remember specifically, there is something that Elizabeth has a nightmare of, but they're always nightmares. So she never has a dream where, like, she's having sex with a young man who loves her and adores her. They're always nightmares for both of them. So there's no aspect of pleasure to this movie whatsoever. None.
Interesting.
And that's that's the thing that undoes it.
Somebody says it's a metaphor for substance abuse.
Well, it is called the substance. I mean, yeah.
Hold on. So watch was when she was begging herself to stop because she was damaging herself, and then she'd relapse and binge on her alternate body and that experience of feeling beautiful and confident and like the world loved you much. Yeah. So it's this idea that when you're on drugs, you feel incredible, you feel amazing, and you keep going. And then when you sober up, it's like you're a different person. And why do you do it? Because it's like you're a different person. Listen, it's a decent
my only
vision,
counterpoint
interpretation
to that interpretation is that would involve at least one scene where it seemed like Demi Moore was getting anything positive out of this, even when she was younger. There is never that.
Well, she kept
always
doing
seems
it.
detrimental.
I mean, that's the other part of this, is that she kept doing it. So yes, there is an aspect of bad writing, and that they should have written something in there.
In that in the clip where she first calls about her finger, he says, or maybe it was the second one of those phone calls, he says, "Do you want to stop?" And she's like, "I can stop." So she didn't know, because there's nothing in the stuff that she's given that says you can stop at any time.
But then she doesn't.
Well, no, I know, because he says the thing about being alone, right? So again, I'm not necessarily really critiquing this. I think it is great to have a movie where you have to sit there and try to figure out what it's about and what it means. I love that. But I can understand why this movie is so divisive for people, because there are people who will say, okay, that's fine, you can have metaphor, but there still has to be something that makes sense here. And that foundational thing is, and I have to agree with this, they don't really explain why she would do this. Because even if the thing sort of misled her and said, well, you'll be able to live as yourself. Well, no, it doesn't really say that. And after the first time, you would know that's not the case. Like, you know right away, oh, this is horrific, and there's nothing to this for me. Again, I don't care. I thought the way it ramped up at the end, I don't give a shit if there's any logic to it. I watched the Street Trash remake, so whatever. I mean, I don't care. But I can see why there are people who reacted very negatively to this.
I think it's fascinating the way they've taken all this over-the-top music video sexualized material and then mixed it up into all this body horror.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. That's hilarious. That's really messy.
And I think the ending is fantastic, where her face crawls onto her star and then just melts.
Yeah.
That part's great. The whole ending is fantastic. Once I realized, oh no, they're just going to stick with this. Then I actually did for a minute. I was like, oh no, this is going to be a dream. This is going to be, she's going to wake up in the hospital and she's been in a coma for 6 months after the car accident. Right? Because with the car thing.
Well, that's the sanity. That's the sanity ending right there.
Yeah, that would be where you'd go. So that would have been the more conventional way to wrap this up.
To tie this back, that's the safe Philip K. Dick ending. Whereas ending it the way they did. Yeah, whereas ending it the way they did is the paranoid, psychotic Philip K. Dick ending.
Yes.
Yes. I'm glad. Listen, I'm glad they had the cojones to go with that ending.
Oh, yeah. Look. It reminded me in many ways of that Strange or Poor Little Things, the movie with Emma Stone.
Yes, yes.
Because I sat there and went, yeah, this is This movie is its own thing. And what happened was it was originally supposed to be released by, because the only reason I saw it was because Mubi, which is a sort of Criterion channel type of thing, except they curate their movies so they don't have their full catalog. They curate even more than even Criterion does. But they had a Black Friday thing where they're like, oh, you can get, I don't know, it was like 6 months for $10 or whatever. I'm like, okay, if that's fine. And I just instantly canceled it again after I subscribed, so I knew I wouldn't have to pay for it again. And it just so happened that the original distributor for this movie was like, yeah, we don't know how we'll make any money from this. We're dumping it. And Mubi came in and grabbed it, so it's on their service. So I was able to stream it on there. So when it came up with the Mubi thing, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize it. Because it makes it seem like Mubi had it made. No, Mubi came in and saved it from being dumped. Because I think somebody must have watched it and went,
what the hell are we going to do with this?
Yeah. It's an over 2-hour movie where a woman explodes in blood as a monster. Yeah, we can't sell this. And they're right. There's no way this would make any money. It would, but I'm glad Mubi got it because you can watch it on there.
But it does. But the thing is, it does mean something. And I think that what's interesting is that because they've left it as open as they have, it leaves it open to lay several different narratives on top of it.
Oh, actually, geez, it's dirt cheap on Prime. It's $6. Wow, that tells you something too. If a new movie is only $6, they don't know what to do with it either. Look, I can't recommend it highly enough, but man, you got to know what you're getting into. That's all.
Yeah, if you can just accept the plot hole and put your own narrative on there and just watch it. Just see what happens.
It got the longest standing ovation for all the films that were shown at Cannes this year, so obviously...
Wait, where did they open it?
At Cannes, where all the arty movies go. Cannes, in France. Cannes Film Festival.
No shit, they went there with this.
Oh, of course they did. This is made for Cannes.
Cannes
is all the weirdo
this is like
shit,
this is like an art house horror film.
Oh yeah. Oh come on, nobody. This is what I'm saying. You're not going to see this in a multiplex with your, kids. This is fucked up looking. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm glad it got made. Not just because everyone involved is really good looking, but I'd love the fact that they juxtaposed all that sexual content with body horror. And honestly, it lends itself to a lot of different interpretations, and that's good. It's good that people can find their own story in there.
Yeah.
I mean, the director said apparently, ultimately, it's about loving yourself, and what happens when you don't.
Sure.
And that works too.
It does.
But
that's why I'm saying is I don't really have an issue with the metaphor part of the movie. But I do understand why some people are saying, there should...
Why does she keep going? Yeah.
Just one little simple motivational thing at the beginning. I think then you can just leave it all behind. She starts the roller coaster and then it gets away from her. Fine. That's fine. But the fact that there does not appear to be any actual pleasure from that, as the drug metaphor would suggest, or that she's desperate because she now no longer has an income, which is a reality many people can relate to. The fact that they don't have one basic little thing, I think, is going to be the problem for a lot of people, where they sit there and go, why the hell would you put yourself through this for no real reason?
Yeah, that makes that's.
Interestingly, though, I did read, and I haven't watched The Fly in quite a while, I have to admit, but the director cited The Fly as a major influence, and all the parts that fall off Sue when she's at the New Year's thing are the exact parts that fall off The Fly in the same order, which is teeth, fingernail, and ear. And so, yeah.
Man, isn't that a back-to-back double feature?
Isn't it? Yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. This movie has a happier ending. I'm not kidding. The Fly is miserable.
Yes.
That movie ends... I will never watch that movie again. I watched that movie once. I will never watch it again.
Really?
That's like... Oh, yeah. That's
only
like
once,
Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yep, one time. I was like,
I've unfortunately seen that movie a couple times.
No. I mean, I will say this about The Fly. I'm just thinking, I think this is accurate. It has made all other Cronenberg films far more joyous for me. No movie sinks to the depression levels that The Fly does. Gina Davis having to blow his head off as he puts the shotgun to his head is one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Nothing of Cronenberg's other films that I've seen, and I've seen I think almost all of them at this point, including ones most people haven't, nothing has hit those depths. Nothing. Fucking Videodrome is a goddamn clown show next to that. You know? Because I'm pretty sure James Woods went into the Videodrome when he shot himself, and that's fine. Whereas Gina Davis is left with nothing except the boyfriend that she murdered because he accidentally transposed himself into a fly. Misery. So yeah, I've only seen it once, and that was enough. Like I said, just like Cuckoo's Nest. There's a whole bunch of films that I'll never watch again. So I'm just like, nope, I got it. I see why it's great. Never need to watch it again. Thank you. Done. This movie I'd probably watch again.
Honestly, watching it again, you'd be able to look for things you didn't see the first time. The shock and awe is
I'm almost tempted to watch it with my wife, but she's not as into gore as I am. But I would be. I really am curious if a woman would see without just saying anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I said almost nothing to her about it, except that I admire the fact that Demi Moore did all of her own nude scenes. Because, again, that's not something a lot of actresses are going to do at a certain age. I mean,
there's a vulnerability to that, to expose yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and the whole point that the movie fixates on that. It is pointing out exactly what most... I mean, I shouldn't even just say women,
and then to slowly turn into
sees.
a monster, an old monster by the end.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
To see a young, extraordinarily fit woman destroying you even further than age already was doing. Yeah. So, I had a great time with it. I again, if you can just hang with what it is, then it is... Oh, and I haven't even talked about the sound design is fantastic. The music is really well done. It's beautifully shot. Like, there's such intentional filmmaking in, like, the distortion of Dennis Quaid and how they make him... They did... I was actually impressed where they didn't Weinstein him, where I was sure he was going to start groping Margaret Qualley at some point. They never do that. They make everything so superficial that even his fixation is purely on the surface. He's not even interested in anything past how she will look on TV. He literally doesn't care about her as a person, even sexually. It is impressive how superficially dedicated he is. All he cares about is that the audience will come to her. That's his only interest. Huh. Whereas I was sure that they would do something else with him.
No, it's interesting to take it that way, yeah.
I thought it was great. It just keeps everything on such a... Literally how you present outside is all that matters. That's all this world cares about. None of the shows even have names. They call it the New Year's show. They never name the network. Like, everything is so basically presented around the idea of, well, if you're not young and attractive, who cares? It's that simple. So, the movie knows what it is. And it's a hell of a thing. I had a great time with it. Like I said, when that monster came out and put on the dress, I knew I was watching something great. I mean, I liked it up to that point, but when it didn't bother to eat, when she went to the show with a paper mask of a cutout of Demi Moore's face with lipstick on it, I left that detail out. She tries to put lipstick on the piece of paper. I was like, this is fucking
who's
unhinged.
In the suit? Who's in the suit?
Margaret Qualley said she was in the suit.
Okay.
Which I would imagine had to be miserable. Because that's a big suit. And they show her in, like, full top to bottom in that thing, so they had to have put her in... I mean, they show her a couple times without the dress on. Pretty much the whole suit.
It's pretty... Yeah, it looks pretty horrible.
Ugh. But, I mean, it's all practical, too. Because you see, like, Demi Moore's got... Like, there's a face of Demi Moore on the back that's in perpetual scream. There's eyeballs and mouths all over the place, different arms. There's she basically shits out a breast from the front of her body during the live performance. I mean, it's literally what it is. She just poops out a boob, and it just splatters on the stage. I don't know how
Are you not entertained, people?
No kidding. And the thing is, up to a certain point, they are. Like at first, nobody really even react. It's crazy. It's a great movie. Great movie. So
Honestly, in a weird way, I don't know why I'm getting the Idiocracy vibes, which is when it becomes so absurd.
No, I think the way that the network and like Dennis Quaid and the TV people, yes, that's definitely, there is definitely something of that where as long as what they're looking at is pretty, they don't really care. So yeah, I kind of see that. Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, for $6,
anyway.
I didn't realize it was so cheap on Amazon. $6 is definitely, if you're at all interested, it is worth seeing. But like I said, I do understand why the two people had such different reactions to it. Now they both, I should say, agreed that the filmmaking was impeccable, which I think, from the technical perspective, neither of them had any problem. It's just that one person just could not get past the idea of why would you do this, and the other person is somebody who's like, fuck it, it's a metaphor, and I don't care if anything makes sense. That's fine. And I think, and I will say, both of those people were men. So there may be, again, I'm trying to keep in mind at all times.
Yeah, you should look up some female reviews.
And that's what I should have done. But these are two people I generally watch, which, tells you something about my own media consumption, but at least I'm aware of it. That's why I want to make sure I'm pointing out that, hey, I know where my biases are. So I would be very curious. I will look up and see what, look up some female reviews of it. Because I do think there's probably things that that women, celebrities or not, would look at this and say, no, I understand this right from the beginning. I'm sure that there are many women who have looked in the mirror at some point and been like, this is not ideal. For whatever reason, external or internal. And maybe this would make complete sense to people in a way that it doesn't make complete sense to me. It's fine. And it does give you, like you found the drug one, loving yourself, the idea
Jekyll
that maybe she had this, or the idea that she thought that her younger self was a lot better of a person than it was. I particularly like that one, where she just thought that she was a good person when she was younger, and in fact she was a monster.
Just to give you one last concept of it. So your brain is completely different when you're younger, right?
Right.
And if you were suddenly, with all your knowledge, put into your 23-year-old body, let's say, right? Top to bottom, despite everything you know, you would still make a lot of mistakes because you're dealing with a totally different hormone set, totally different. Your brain is still growing. It doesn't finish growing until like your late 20s, early 30s. So, this idea of it's like, think of it as this. You make another version of yourself, right? And it's a 15-year-old boy. Do you think the 15-year-old boy is going to be able to do all the things right that it's supposed to do? I mean, this is an extreme jump to some degree, but it's the whole idea that sometimes youth doesn't know any better.
Look, I often say that I was a moron when I was younger in many ways, and I was. But that's what I mean about this character. There are people who have a warped perception of themselves. And maybe that is the idea, is that, and it's a lot of celebrities, if you read about them and some of the stuff that happens, you quickly figure out that they think that they are different than everybody else, that they're more special. And that warping can manifest in many ways. It could be as simple as she imagined that her younger self would take care of her as an older self. And instead, she was actually always a selfish person. And her vanity was obscured, or the vanity obscured her to remembering herself clearly. I mean, obviously, a lot of this is rooted in vanity. Both external and internal. She internalized the external pressures to be something that she wasn't anymore. So there's lots of ways to read it. That's why I would still recommend it. But like I said, I do understand why at least one of the reviewers was like, no, this movie makes no sense. It doesn't. But I don't know that it has to. It doesn't have to make sense logically, because that's not what its goal is. So I think anybody who's even, I was about to say superficially, if you're at all intrigued by the trailer, you should watch it, especially if it's that cheap to rent. I just assumed it would be $20.
Intrigued enough that I watched a video review of it, which is not often what I do, but I was curious enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Your wife isn't into gore either, right? Your wife doesn't.
Oh no, I would never get her to sit down and watch this.
And that's a shame, because I really think that I do think it would be valuable to have a woman's perspective on it.
No,
so I
I have such a weird situation with my wife. My wife wants to watch broy spy action shit all the time, which I'm fine with. That's a big part of me. But it's like she doesn't want to watch any of this. Was it A24? Is that the studio?
No, it's Mubi, but I mean, same difference. Same difference.
I know, but yes, she doesn't want to watch any art films, any like horror art films. Like no. She's
sure. Yeah. I don't know how you graft this metaphor onto spy films.
No, I don't think you do either. And honestly, most of the time I don't care because we watch a lot of fun shit. But it's like we're always watching kind of fun shit. You know what I mean? But we don't watch heavy shit like that. And I just think at the end of the night, neither of us really wants it. We're just kind of like, you know what? It's been a shit day. Let's just...
I at some point will try to get my wife to watch this. But I'll tell her. I really just want
I wish you the best of luck.
No, I think she'll watch it. If I tell her that I want her opinion of it, I will be curious. And I do think there is a 20% chance that she'll think it's great. Because I think she will understand what it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. And like I said, I've seen clips of it, and it looks expertly done.
I don't know if she'll love it, like want to watch it again.
Well,
but that's a different thing.
Like I said, I wish you the best of luck. Let me know.
Yeah, but in any event, I'm glad I watched it. I would say for $6, if you were at all interested, it is absolutely worth watching. And if you have Mubi, it's on there. But for $6, I honestly, I didn't even look at Amazon until just now because I assumed as a new release it was going to be more. But I think because it's so out there, that, when something is that relative, it's under $10, that either means it's old or they don't know what to do with it. So
when it's too weird,
that rewards you in terms of not having to spend as much. So
if
be
that's
thankful it's so weird. If
that's your particular
if it's
flavor.
not, you would never look at it to begin with. But if you assumed, as I did till 10 minutes ago, that it was going to be $20 and you were going to wait, unless you have Mubi, $6, yeah, it's worth $6. Watch it. And that's it. That's all I have to review because that was almost an hour by itself. So always read the fine print on any deal you're going to make. Be aware of what you're injecting into your body. I think that's a good tip for everybody. And on that note, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.